Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the Tower UNN. I want to send out greetings just to everyone who tunes in every Sunday to watch the show and be a part of this show with us. I want to send my regards to everyone who, if the week was rough, I hope that the next weeks become better. But I also want to thank people who have continuously been a part of this, who have seen us through, and who continuously come back and always come back to these shows and more. So as always, today is the Tower UNN, and before we start, always as it is tradition, we start with the national anthem. So we will first start with the national anthem, and then as usual, I also have my guest in the studio. So after the national anthem, then we'll come back with more.
Oh, Uganda, may God uphold thee. We lay our future in thy hand. United, free, for liberty, together we'll always stand. Oh, Uganda, the land of freedom, our love and labor we give, and we've neighbors all at our country's calling, peace and friendship.
Welcome back from our national anthem. And without further ado, I would love to introduce my co-host, our guest for today. I'd like to introduce Mr. Kintu to come and give his regards to our viewers watching us right now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Bana Mboka, Mbote, Sangonini, Sangomalamu, Uganda. I greet all of you, our brothers in Uganda and our brothers in Congo and the entire Great Lakes region. We are all one people. We are all one group of Bantu and Nilotics suffering together, suffering at the hands of one group of people who imposed themselves in our midst. I wish you the blessings of this wonderful Sunday. For you who are Christians, you know very well this is the day of Pentecost. I congratulate you for coming from your churches and praying to God that the Holy Spirit will descend upon us and give us the wisdom, the courage, and the victory which we are looking for. Looking forward to a wonderful discussion between us and you so that we can come up with something constructive to save our region. Thank you.
Without further ado, similar in the same line of tradition, we will be playing our federal state anthem, and today we will be playing the state anthem of Rwenzururu Kingdom.
Rwenzururu wetu muliwa tukanya kama kusamarira ngukuri ebitande ibyatuguhana. Rwenzururu wetu muwitamana mbo eribana liwerere misitu yawika tuhembula yitorere nomukene inyatuzoera enzururu wetu uwikesongeze yesu nyamaze tusumwibanda tukabya twamanya okomunyu namayere tukabyana engebe nyibuya nyamuwanga wetu sindiko businga n'omusinga obwabenzururu twamayiriro mubyala byawe iwowene mubyenetu emibulu yosi.
Welcome back from that state anthem. And today, the main topic for today, we're going to be, of course, diving into, first of all, Uganda's parliamentary administrative budget, what that looks like, how much of that has been revealed to us or told to us. But before we even get to the day's program, today we're going to talk about something prior that Mr. Kintu is going to elaborate on. And this is about the de-escalating relationship between, of course, the governance right now in the DRC of Congo and, of course, the political dynamics between the Congo and Rwanda at this point in time. So for that reason, we wanted to choose a state that is a neighboring state with the Congo, but a state that, because of European-centered borders, have separated people across borders. But with the implementation of Federalism, this allows for a state like Rwenzururu to reclaim its indigenous footprint, which does not only exist in Uganda, but goes beyond Uganda. And it can still allow for Rwenzururu to be a participating federal state without it looking like the colonial shortcut that it was made to look like, the colonial partition that was created. But without further ado on these issues, I would like to call on Mr. Kintu to give us more information about what's going on between the DRC of Congo and Rwanda right now and its diplomatic relations, and how this relates to not only our pursuits for federalism in Uganda, but to governance in the whole region.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we started this program, I sent a special greeting, especially to our Congolese brothers in their language, Lingala. I had a good reason for that. We, as a people of the Great Lakes region, are suffering at the hands of the Batusi from Rwanda under the leadership of Paul Kagame and Yoweri Museveni. Now, those of you who remember one of our first exposure of the dirty or criminal or vicious plan of these people in the Great Lakes region was of that Mutusi I exposed, who came into Uganda to train into terrorist tactics so that they can go back and cut off North and South Kivu of Congo, so that they can create it as a separate new nation in the similar way Southern Sudan was cut off from the rest of Sudan. And they would call this new nation Ebatusiland, dominated by them, declaring themselves as the only people living there. Now, if you've been following the situation, over 12 million people have been killed by these Tutsis in both South and North Kivu. North Kivu involves the area where some of our Bakonjo people live. And that whole area, including Ituri Forest. This is where the killings are going on. Who are the killers? Kagame and Museveni organized a group of Batusi under the title of M23. M23, they have about 100 other different smaller groups of killers, all funded, armed, and trained by both Museveni and Kagame. But M23 now has come out to be the most notorious killer destabilizing group in Eastern Congo. What is surprising is on April 28 this year, the ambassador of Rwanda to DRC in Kinshasa, Mr. Vincent Karega, plus the ambassador of Uganda to DRC, Mr. Joseph Rutabana. Now you can tell the names. Rutabana is not an Acholi or Hitesoto or Muganda. They are all Nyarwandas. They met with the ambassador of the United States, Hammer, and Mr. Brown at Kigali's request, meaning they were requested by Kigali. When they say Kigali, they mean Paul Kagame, to meet and deliver talking points from Kigali, both stating that he is not supporting M23. Now, because the actions of M23 have become so notorious that even the United States is involved in trying to whitewash Kagame's image that they are not supporting M23, which is a total lie. They want the world to believe that M23 is a part of a large group from Uganda led by a man called Sultani Makanga and Bertrand Bisimwa. Now, where are these names coming from? They are trying to cover up that it is not Kagame, it's not Museveni, but some other crazy characters from Uganda who are carrying out these activities of killing innocent people, causing all those refugees in Congo. Those refugees have been flocking to Uganda. Many have been killed, and the suffering is enormous. Definitely, we are suffering in Uganda at the hands of the Tutsis. But we are not anywhere close to what these people in North Kivu are undergoing right now. This has prompted the Congolese people to rise up because they have now realized nobody is going to come to their rescue. Not the Mzungu, worst of all, not the Americans, not the British, not the French, not the Belgians. So, as we are speaking, you've heard that the Congolese people declared Rwanda airline cannot land in Kinshasa, and they are cutting off diplomatic relations with the two countries. To make a long story short, the Congolese people are rising up against Rwanda, against the Tutsis, against Kagame. What are you Ugandans doing? What are you Ugandans doing? This is the time for all of us to join hands as Bantu people, including Nilotics of the Great Lakes region, against these killers, the Batusi, who are the killers of the entire Great Lakes region. This is what we are calling you for. And this is the truth. Anybody who bullshits us that we are all together because of their marital relations with some of those killers is a nonsense. And people who are advocating that kind of conspiracy, and I call it a conspiracy, to cooperate with them simply because you have several of them in your bedrooms, that is against the wishes and the safety and the independence of the people of Uganda. Now, if you people want to do that, go and join your brother-in-laws in Kigali. Nobody's going to stop you from doing that. In fact, we can contribute to your free ride. But Uganda is dying. Uganda is bleeding. Congo is bleeding. The Hutu population of Rwanda is dying simply because you are accommodating this relationship for selfish or marital reasons. That is totally unacceptable, and we have to fight it, not by words, but by action. And if God gives me another 2 days to live on this planet, let me spend them physically, verbally, spiritually, and otherwise defending the people of the Great Lakes region, because God created us to be Ugandans, not to be dominated by Batusi. Let's join hands with the people of Congo and all the native indigenous people of Great Lakes countries to fight this danger that we are now faced.
Thank you for that, Mr. Kintu, and for that update of what has been happening within the region, as this has been a focal point for so many years, the relations in the region. But before we move on from this very topic, I would like for us, the producer has a video on fresh conflicts within the region, and I'd like for us to watch that video first before moving into our program for today.
Tensions brew amid Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda as the two nations trade charges against each other. The DRC government has accused Rwanda of backing resurgent M23 rebel group, which is active in its volatile east, while Rwandan government accused the Congolese army of firing rockets into its territory. Amid the soaring tensions between the two nations, U.S. State Secretary Antony Blinken called for a diplomatic solution after meeting with Kinshasa's top diplomat.
I'm very much also looking forward to discussing how we can support peace and security and stability in the eastern DRC, which is under some challenge, but where we want to be very supportive of important African efforts that are ongoing to deal with those challenges. And I must say, in particular, we applaud the diplomatic efforts that we see underway for the Nairobi Initiative and the pursuit of a lasting peace in the region, something the United States very much supports. So, Mr. Minister, again, welcome.
Meanwhile, hundreds of people hit the streets in two cities of the DRC, protesting against Rwanda's alleged meddling in the country's affairs. Protesters gathered outside Rwandan embassy in the capital of Kinshasa and in the eastern city of Bakubu that touches the Rwandan border. Rwandans go home slogans rocked both of the cities as fresh clashes erupted between the Congolese army and the M23 that spread close to Goma, an important commercial hub of 1 million people in eastern DRC.
Through this protest, we would like to express the indignation and anger of the Congolese population in the face of this somewhat more belligerent attitude of our neighbor Rwanda, which is not curiously doing it for the first time.
The recent attacks by M23 came after Rwanda announced that 2 of its soldiers were being held in eastern Congo. In 2013, the DRC army quelled M23, a rebellion Congolese Tutsi group, but it resumed fighting late last year after accusing the government of the DRC for failing to respect a 2009 agreement under which its fighters were to be incorporated into the army. Rwanda has denied backing M23. The relations between the two nations have been strained since the mass arrival of Rwandan Hutus accused the slaughtering Tutsis during the 1994 genocide in eastern DRC. Now, according to the United Nations, the violence in eastern DRC has displaced 72,000 people.
We are now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the
one of the questions with such conflicts, you always ask yourself why the big multi-million-dollar budget institutions do not cover such news. Like CNN's not covering this, BBC's not covering this. As you said, Mr. Chintu, there's a whitewashing of President Kagame's presidency, and for 35 years they whitewashed Museveni's presidency as well. So it's always important to remember that Rwanda and Congo, and also the reactionary nature that now has been profiled amongst, of course, people who relate to the aristocracy of the Tutsis before they were taken out of power for exploiting the Hutus, is still being used today by the Western powers to be their guns and machineries on the African continent, and also especially for us within our region, and them taking over politically, socially, and economically, and draining our region remains very key, and it can only happen in repressive ways. So I'm not surprised when CNN or all those big networks, BBC, do not put on such news of rising conflicts within the region, because it doesn't play to their interest. But Mr. Chintu, I'll invite you now if you would like to say more on the video content that we just watched.
Yes. First of all, let's tell our listeners that the American policy in our region is not for the support of the safety, stability, and the progress, and I would even add on independence and sovereignty of our people. When you talk about democracy, their definition of democracy is totally different from our definition of democracy. For us, we have learned democracy as it stems from the old Greek philosophers, that it is democracy stands for the majority will or majority rule and minority rights. When Muzungu comes to our region, that's not what they think of democracy, and that's not what they want you to believe. For them, democracy means that they are special and they can get whatever we have, or rather, whatever they have is theirs, whatever we have is theirs, and we have nothing. So exploitation is the bottom line for them. Now, they realized within our region that they could tame, and they have successfully tamed, this small minority of Batusi, and they are grooming it to be the dominant force that determines our existence in the entire region. Now, if you are really true democratic, in the spirit of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln and the JFK, how could you allow 9 or 10% of Batusi to dominate 90% of Bahutu in Rwanda? They even poured in money, brought in military equipment, brought in their personnel. We know that they sent in special commandos and the Marines to help the Kagame group to take over Rwanda, kill 1 million people, and then declare falsely that no, the people who died are the ones who invaded. And there is nothing closer to real bullshit as that statement. And it is a shame to see that statement coming out of honorable gentlemen in high up positions in the US government and the British government. Well, we know the reason why they did that. Because they were preparing for the total takeover of Congo, which is the richest country in this whole world in respect to natural resources. There is no any other country which is loaded with riches as Congo. And they want to colonize it, but they are not going to send their boys. They are going to use these hooligans from Kigali to work as administrators of this new Muzungu colony called the Congo. Because as long as the Muzungu is mining all the minerals, taking them for their to expand their wealth, and they leave you there, you kill the natives. As after all, what these people want is to have space to graze their cattle. That's all. And there is plenty of grass in the Congo to feed any cows, any number of cows you want. Since these people are just cow keepers, that's all they want. And they are going to do that unless we stop them. It is our duty and our responsibility to stop this nonsense. Because if we don't, we are going to perish. Okay? Democracy does not mean the same thing to them as it means to us. I think if you remember in one of my lectures, I told you that former Attorney General of the United States, Ramsey Clark, told us way back in the 80s, that our lives as Black people are dispensable. These people don't give a damn. You've seen how they have screamed when 19 kids were slaughtered by their own child in Texas. You've seen how they are screaming at the killing of blonde and the blue-eyed people in Ukraine. But have you heard them scream when over 10 million Congolese have been killed? No. Shamelessly, these people didn't even announce it on their news networks when President Magufuli of Tanzania died. But they'll tell us about a whale that collapsed at one of the beaches somewhere in California or Australia. They'll tell us about the tiger, which died when it is giving birth in some zoo. But they did not even broadcast to the world that a president, a whole president of a country called Tanzania has passed away. They didn't. Not CNN, not BBC, not CBS, not NBC, not Fox News. None of these Muzungu broadcasts put it out as news. And when I see some of our people becoming real house slaves, shedding tears, and I don't mean I wish anybody to die, but heck, you're not going to get my tears that cheaply. My tears will be shed when our people are being killed. And worst of all, when they are being killed by people whom you white people have supported kill us. It's a shame.
Thank you
We
so
have to
much.
grow up, ladies and gentlemen. We have to grow up.
We have to come to that realization of not only our politics, but also the geopolitics that enables and lights the fire and keeps the fire ignited for these atrocities to happen over and over again. Because even though we think we're not, we can perish. And that has always been the goal, our us to perish. So that, because it's only when we don't exist on those lands and those riches that anyone else can have claim to them. But with that being said, I would like to ask the producer uh, to then take us to a short break. We shall continue to follow this story as it unfolds. And I believe that Mr. Kintu, you keep us updated as it keeps on unfolding. I just got information that the African Union is trying to be the mediator between the two nations. But before we actually move on, Mr. Chinto, I'd like to ask you a question about what role you think that the African Union can play in this as well, thinking about how the African Union is also an empty shell that has been left behind. We had a lot of hope for what it could do for us, but now I don't know how much it can do for Africans as well.
Well, hello, are you there? Hello? You're frozen.
Oh yes, I am here. Oh, yes, I am here.
Okay.
I can hear you.
You were
But
asking me about the African Union. Well, as you know, the African Union was set up by the colonialists or neo-colonialists or the Bazungu to destroy the organization of African unity. And with that said, the African Union is a new weapon which the Western powers are using to exploit Africa. In other words, I wouldn't compare them to anything less than a toilet paper. That's what they are. They couldn't do anything when the Tigris were being slaughtered right there at their nose in Addis Ababa, where they are headquartered. Now they are claiming to come up and talk about Congo with respect to the M23. That's hogwash. If I could borrow from, what is his name, Mr. Naduli's son, when he was asked about some question, it was in Uganda, by the way, he said, I'm not going to bother with that. It's on Kodomali. So if something like that could be translated in English, it is close to that when you are referring to the African Union. They can't do anything. And they were not created to do anything. How many wars, how many people have been killed in Africa, ranging from the destruction of Somalia to the destruction of Libya and the killing of Gaddafi, who was a great supporter of African unity, to the wars of Darfur in Sudan, to the wars between French-speaking and English-speaking Cameroonians, to the killing of Christians in Nigeria, whereby the Nigerian government, which is Muslim-dominated, has turned a blind eye on the massacring of Christians in their churches in Nigeria. Anywhere you look, what have they done when people are being slaughtered in Mali? What have they done in Upper Volta? What is it called now?
Burkina Faso.
Anywhere you look, Burkina Faso. What have they done? Nothing. They only come out when the white man wants them to act as toilet papers. Then they do their job. Otherwise, they are just sitting there in the toilet room. That's what they are. From what I have seen and what they are doing, I don't think they are worth my respect. Small as it is, I ain't going to give it to them. They are now going to play the same game because the white man, and I believe the Americans, as I've quoted you, this meeting which took place at the instigation of Kagame, using the American ambassador to bring together two Rwandas who are purporting to be ambassadors of two different countries in Kigali.
Yeah.
What does that tell you as a Ugandan, as an African, for that matter, as a person of indigenous Congolese, Ugandan, Rwanda countries? What does that tell you? That you are surrounded by hyenas. And don't expect a jackal to come and rescue when the hyenas are attacking you. Because a jackal is a meat eating, a hyena is a meat eating, a tiger is a meat eating, and a lion, which might come from UK, is another meat eater. And you think you have a chance to survive unless you run for your life. And that's what we have to do as indigenous people. And I pray that we join hands, we the indigenous people of Uganda, of Kenya, Tanzania, Congo, wherever we are. Let's join hands. Let's join our brothers. Thank God the Congolese have started. Instead of fooling around with this balloon of going to jamborees and dancing all night long, as some of our people are now preparing for these jamborees during this summer. Heck no, that ain't going to cut the cake. That's not the way to save a country.
Thank you very much, because that gives our viewers, I believe, the insight into how there is already, we must understand, there is a system, there is a formula, and there are structures that have been put in place to make sure that we're continuously exploited. Until we rise to the occasion, we will always find ourselves in this exploitative circle. But we will keep you posted with this story as it progresses on all our other different shows, and I'm sure Mr. Chintu will bring any further updates when we get updates on the story. But in order to start our program for today, we're going to go into a short break, and then we will come back with today's program, which is we're going to be looking at how the Ugandan Parliament is the fastest way and the most certified way to get rich quick. So more on that after the break.
The importance of a federal system of governance in Uganda. 1. Federalism restores peace and regional stability. 2. Federalism promotes political participation. 3. Federalism encourages economic development across the country. 4. Federalism provides multiple levels of government action. 5. Federalism accommodates a diversity of opinions. 6. Federalism protects against tyranny of the majority. 7. Federalism promotes unity without imposing uniformity. Register today and join the UFCC Assembly by visiting www.ufcc.uk.
Dr. Andrew Takome Kaira was born on 30th January 1945 in a small town known as Nkokonjeru in the Uganda region. He is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country sent him to an early grave. He was a lawyer and professor and had many accomplishments since 1971, with many of his accolades attained from his education and political experiences, both nationally and internationally. Significant is his doctoral dissertation titled Condoism in Uganda, which has awarded him an internationally recognized terminology now used in criminology. He joined several political organizations, including Uganda Freedom Movement, UFM, which he was the leader, the Uganda National Liberation Front, UNLF, later joining the National Resistance Army, NRA, which had once been his organization's rival. Dr. Kaira is regarded as one of Uganda's forgotten heroes, a true nationalist whose love for his country led to his premature death. He was just 46 years old when he was assassinated on 6th March 1987 during a dinner with his close friends and 3 female acquaintances. His killers have never been brought to justice.
So, welcome back from that short break. And on today's program, we're going to be looking at, of course, how much goes into parliamentary administrative fees and how much we spend as a nation facilitating for individuals apparently serving in a parliament that is supposed to serve us. So, without further ado, I would like to ask the producer to play us our first video for today's program before we get into the details of it all.
There is continued discontent when the government keeps saying they have no solution to assist the Ugandan household in the face of rising commodity prices. Today, the Kampala City Traders Association added their voice to the discontent.
And we want government to be very direct and exact on telling us in figures. If they can't announce figures, let the government announce percentage cuts on every expenditure that goes to the recurrent one. You cannot ask us to bank our money so that it is borrowed by the government, other than encouraging a reduction of expenditure for administration. The ministers, the members of parliament, after all, even the allowances is not subjected to taxation. A good tax system must be equitable. If tax is to be equally paid, the big must pay big taxes, the medium pay medium, and the small pay small.
regardless of the economic arguments the president made, explaining the lack of action by the government physically and in monetary terms. The economic arguments are losing appeal the more the economic conditions bite.
The president coming out to say, please tighten your belt. You can only tighten and reduce expenditure on what you have. If you don't have, what are you going to economize on? There is nothing. That if you can reduce taxes on any kind of beer, whether transparent or opaque, you can reduce some money on the tax of a liter of fuel, whichever it is. Because you know that fuel has a complementary demand. The bakeries, the agriculturists, the shippers of containers, the travelers all use fuel. Therefore, if you reduce by a small margin on the price of fuel, everybody will follow suit because of the complementarity of the demand in the product of fuel.
So far, there have been a series of meetings by the top government economists with the promise of devising solutions, but nothing concrete has so far been produced, while the prices continue to rise and the incomes do not. Joyce Ahewa, NTV Business.
Welcome back. Welcome back from that video. So, Mr. Kintu, as we speak on this video and what's currently happening in Uganda, for the most part, it seems like the discontent, and where a lot of, so we have a whole global inflation that is not being talked about at the level or caliber that it should be talked about, because it's affecting on a global level scale. Everyone's being affected by the inflated prices that we're seeing. But then in Uganda, you're having this in the midst of luxurious living for a few that are to be the people that happen to be the ones that are serving. But that also is written off as administrative fee. So before we dive into this, I'd like the producer to please provide us with, first of all, for our viewers, we would like to give you just primary details about Uganda's parliament, where the numbers of MPs have grown from 457 members of parliament to a whole 527 members of parliament. And our current parliament is the 6th largest legislative body on the African continent. And this is in comparison to countries like Morocco, Ethiopia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Algeria, and Egypt. I would love for us to all note that if we're talking about geographic landmass, we are the smallest nation geographically in terms of landmass with this big a parliament. So if we take that into account, because all these nations are relatively bigger than our nation as it stands, and the number of people we have serving in parliament, Mr. Kintu, what do we make of this relationship? I'd like for the producer to go on to the next slide, because I think this ties into this, the next slide, whereby it is said that Ugandans were the most highly represented in society. We have a very high representation society because we have so many members of parliament. Each parliament represents an average of 86,000 people, about 86,800 people. And this is in comparison to Ethiopia. This is why I said landmass would be interesting to look at, and populations, because in Ethiopia, even though they have a very big parliament, you only have 176,000 people per parliamentarian. But in Uganda, you have 86,800 people being represented by every parliamentarian in comparison to everywhere else. What do we start to make of this relationship that we now have in terms of the statistics and data that exists versus the relationship that we have with parliament? Are we really represented? Because having a lot of parliamentarians does not automatically mean representation in Uganda. I think we can start our show from there, Mr. Kintu.
Yes. we do not have representatives of people in the so-called parliament. As I said at one time, there is a parliament and a parliament. A parliament is where people are represented, and those who represent people make the laws. But if you look at our parliament, they don't represent people, and they don't make laws, but rather they approve laws which have been made by one person or one family called Yoweri Museveni and a family. And they just rubber stamp it, and then it becomes law. However, they cannot. Now, you've heard them shouting, and they are right to shout. And you know why they are doing that? To give you nice music to hear and think that there is somewhere out there shouting on our behalf. But they are not. They are shouting for themselves, because whatever they are going to come down with, one, it is not going to bite. They cannot impose anything that they have deliberated upon and they say this is what we as representatives of the people want. It's not going to happen, and they have not done it. How many times have they held hearings and then they put the minister on the carpet to tell us where this money went, and the minister tell them, sorry, that money was lost and we don't know where it is, and that's the end of the story. They should have the teeth to bite. If that money was stolen and it was allocated for this particular project or purpose, whoever is responsible for stealing it must be brought to court and sent to Luzira. There is out there. Or if there is no bedroom, they can sleep on the floor as long as they're in Luzira. But they don't do it. They just make a noise. In the meantime, they are going ahead enriching themselves. Yeah, you are right to call it get rich. Because this so-called parliament, when you look at the people who sit there, they come out of nowhere, and before you know it, they have a brand new car, they got these allowances, they got this allowance, they got this money, and they are making, I think you said they have increased their salary from 25 million per month to 50 million per month. They have doubled their salaries. Has the salary of the average teacher been raised even by 10%, as we saw in Kenya after Labor Day declaration, or in Tanzania? No. Worst of all, even that teacher or that doctor is not getting his salary for the last 7-9 months. But in Uganda, these guys are doing very well. You see, this is the tragedy of our country. We have people who are representing themselves, and they want to become rich. And a lot of them are very rich. There was one who couldn't even pronounce his own name, nor the name of his own party. And he cried when they threw him out of parliament because he has lost that opportunity of making millions per month. This is a get-rich thing. Now, if these people can honestly tell us that they're representing the people, and if they can honestly tell us that they are for the liberation of our country, as some of the opposition MPs claim, and that's why they went into that parliament, that they represent the people, they are against the dictatorship. I want them to swear before the Almighty God and before all of us that they are going to put, they are earning how many millions? 50 million per month? Let them put about 10 million per person in a war chest that is going to fight against the dictatorship. I'll be willing to stand by the border and collect that money. I promise I'm not eat it. I'll keep it for that war chest. Let them put some money outside. But giving us this BS that we are fighting from inside when their bellies are expanding like that of, what do we call it? we have a little frog in Uganda called Ndizala frog. It always has an expanded belly because it eats too much. Anyway, they look like. This is not a parliament for the people. Secondly, it is a hogwash. When you look at the inflation we are suffering in Uganda is not only in prices of goods, but even in inflation of positions and the titles. Now, let's take an area called Uganda. Let's say Uganda has 86,000 people in that area. You have an MP elected by the people. Then you have an MP for women. Now, I don't even understand when people go there to vote, do they separate men from women so that the women will vote for their own? I don't think they do. Then there is an MP for the handicapped. I don't know if they have someone there who is handicapped. How many of those are handicapped to deserve a special MP? And then they have an MP for whatever other reason. I think they should even have an MP for the homosexuals and an MP for the lesbians and an MP for the what do you call it? The blind, and an MP for prostitutes. They should have, but they have multiple MPs in one area, which is ridiculous. The whole, and you know that these positions of MP are designed in State House for one purpose, to employ their own people so that they can have access to that 50 million shilling salary. That's the whole idea behind this whole design of multiple MPs. And then, stupidly enough, not too long ago, they accused a man called Anselm Charugonza, who was the chief administrative officer in some district called Intoroko. They accused him of recruiting 500 friends into district government jobs. Now, if you can accuse this man for recruiting friends into the job, how about this guy who recruited even morons and idiots and crabbies into government positions as Minister of Education when she needs education herself, as commander of the army who can't even speak correct English and read something written for him, and the brother-in-laws and the son-in-laws and God knows who else into positions. Why don't you arrest that bastard? That's the person you should arrest first if you are against corruption. But my advice, you Ugandans who purport to be in the opposition, the first thing you should do, never participate in a dirty stuff. To make it easier for you to understand, because some of you have very small brains. I'm sorry to say that because I know some of you have very small brains. If you are going to wash your clothes, you don't wash them in dirty water. This thing called dirty water. Why do you go in there? Why do you encourage people to go in there? If you are really a nationalist leader, and when we say that you have failed your mission, don't think we are being against you or attacking you as a person, but you are displaying something that is unfit. You shouldn't participate in this baloney business. Now, you mentioned that the price of goods is going up. Yes, the whole world now is suffering from inflation. I know that. Even here in America, we have this problem. But the salaries have not gone up. Yet, you MPs have doubled your earnings. Are you standing on the side of the people or on the side of your pocketbook? And I think the people of Uganda have a right to grab you and treat you the way the Sri Lankans treated their leaders recently. Whip them, tear their clothes off, and let them run around the town naked so that they can understand that we are pissed off.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kintu, for that, because I think that leads us to the next bit of this conversation. You said something very important there. Why would you go wanting your shirt to get clean, wash it in dirty water? So we're going to just go and gloss over the salary provisions, because on the next slide, the producer can show that the salary for an MP was 25 million shillings before, because now it's gone up, and we'll look at a breakdown of how it's gone up. And they had 6 million shillings in amenities. This was just allowance depending on how far they had to travel between their constituency and the parliament buildings in Kampala. However, there is something interesting that I want us to be able to talk about, Mr. Kintu, and this is Article 85. So, Article 85 of our Constitution, if the producer can show that as well, this guarantees that a member of Parliament shall be paid such emoluments, such gratuity, and shall be provided with such facilities as may be determined by the Parliament. A member of Parliament shall not hold any office of profit or emolument likely to compromise his or her office. So it is the salary of people who serve in the Parliament of Uganda that can be discussed for any quick adjustments or changes that they so they decide how much they pay themselves, how much they increase their salary without even asking the burden holders, the taxpayers, and the people who have to actually even pay back all this debt that they have accumulated. So if we could talk about why is it that participating in this charades how is it that it cannot liberate us as a nation? Because our primary problems that existed when different opposition parties have looked at going to Parliament to fight it internally still exist because of this relationship that parliamentary proceedings have with us, the masses. We accumulate the debt, it's on the heads of Ugandans to pay it back. And also taxpayers have to pay for the salary that they decide they deserve because of their jobs.
Yes,
and without
that Article 85. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say before, just to show, as because we're trying to look at now what is the relationship that still remains, however much we as Ugandans pretend that if we participate in this parliament, we're going to be able to help resurrect ourselves out of the burdens that now exist versus the reality. Because there was wanted to ask the producer to show us a video of attention to these high prices, where it started, and then we can examine to where we are at now in terms of discussion of the inflated prices of normal day-to-day goods and commodities, and then we can come and talk about it all in a whole.
There is no objection to this application by the State Attorney, and in the premises I hereby grant bail. Each of the 5 applicants is released on a cash bail of 200,000 Ugandan shillings.
Today we have appeared before Her Worship, CN, so that we can apply for bail for some of the members or some of the students who were arrested last week, at the same time arraigned in court on Friday, and their matter was adjourned to 18th day of this month. Towards the end of last week, we got some information that we can produce, or we can do everything possible for their production in court for bail application. Today we have good news that out of the 15, they have released 5 on 1 or 2 conditions so that they can prepare for their exams tomorrow at the same time next week. And tomorrow we shall be appearing for another group of 5.
This has been a signal to all of Ugandans that we should rise and fight for our rights. No one will come to deliver what we want before we rise up to show that we really need it. It was a sign demonstrated by the students that we expected maybe the nation could cope up with, but as we have always done, we have always let people down, we have always left those who fight for us to fight on their own. But I thank the students' fraternity that we have stood together until our comrades are going to be free, and we shall continue to push for the betterment of our country.
Welcome back from that video. But before we continue, Mr. Kintu, after this video, I wanted us to watch then another video of here we have students organizing amongst themselves, university students, because this was a month ago. We hinted about it on one of our shows, where the prices were skyrocketing, and it's prices of day-to-day commodities such as soap, sugar, milk, things that people use in their households were going up or in their daily lives. So they organized themselves and protested. Few of them were arrested, and police, of course, was used to push them back. But this happens a month ago, and now we have 5 of them released, and then some still are being held. But right after that, you have now the body that makes the legislative laws is going to pass a bill of a huge sum of money. Could the producer show us that video as well before we continue?
Those in favor say on the contrary, nay. The ayes have it.
In less than an hour, Parliament had passed a 617 billion supplementary budget meant to support government activities in the remaining month of the current financial year. However, the budget was passed without the House receiving and debating the report of the Budget Committee, which had processed it in the morning. Questions were raised over the breach of this practice.
But Madam Speaker, coming here, the Minister, to make us look so shabby, it was really not so fair at all. Madam Speaker, as a committee, we had processed. I had a minority report about that, but all that was not given opportunity just because of the time.
Madam Speaker, we will continue to improve in the circumstances. Because supplementary, I cannot know when a supplementary will come, but I will continue to improve.
In the budget, UPDF has been allocated 151 billion shillings, with 64 billion earmarked for Operation Shujaa against the ADF rebels in DR Congo, and 87 billion shillings for the operations against cattle rustlers in the Karamoja sub-region.
They are requesting for 80 billion shilling in the budget for Operation Shujaa. But they also now have brought a supplementary of 64 billion shilling for the same operation. And that's why I stood on proceed. I thought the Speaker will allow us. We have a minority report by Honorable Samba. There is a committee report itself. This speed I have not seen. I hope we have not caused an accident already.
Students who have been on government scholarship, those left with 1 year, 2 years, 3 years to complete their courses, money to facilitate their scholarship in the coming financial year is not in the budget. So there is no way we can start financing issues and activities in Congo that are speculative. Congo, as of now, is not a threat. What we've done should be enough.
Karamoja has been critical these days. There have been a lot of insecurity there, and the people there have been suffering. So I think they need to really intensify security in Karamoja is really worth spending on.
Some MPs protested the request of the Interreligious Council of 2.5 billion for Uganda Muslim Supreme Council to organize elections, 1 billion for Fort Portal Catholic Diocese, and 600 million for Greater Ankole Diocese to organize Martyrs' Day celebrations.
So I think
in my view, as a host of the Martyrs' Day and what we have gone through, people have died during COVID, for us we have survived. I think it is very important that we celebrate that day.
Because of our motto for God and my country, I find this in order to go and celebrate Uganda Martyrs' Day, especially after having 2 years of no celebration.
There is money for Mufti Mobaje to conduct election. Is there money for the Supreme Mufti? Because I belong to Chibuli. Public resources, you don't just spend them, but MPs, even what they don't know, they're just saying yes, yes.
In other approvals, the Office of the President was allocated 86 billion, State House 77 billion, Ministry of Works and Transport 25 billion for the roads in Karamoja, 251 billion to address shortfalls in salaries and wages, and 21 billion for local governments. According to the State Minister for Finance, Henry Musasizi, domestic borrowing and external financing will be the source of funding for this supplementary budget. Herbert Ziwa, NTV at Parliament.
On 5th October
Hello.
Oh, sorry. I forget sometimes that I'm muted when the videos are playing, so my apologies to our viewers and you yourself. But in regards to this video, what I found very interesting is after we've seen so many people try, no, not many people, a few parliamentarians really pretend in the video to be against this. It took them less than an hour, less than an hour to approve something as vile as this, a supplementary budget. So without, I wouldn't say much more about it, but I'm interested to know within the contrast of these two videos of something that's organized independently and then politicized, and now we have the attachment to it, then Parliament takes it over, because then we're also independently going to talk about the fact that the movement that was started by the students now became a political issue that now is headed by political parties, but we'll talk about that in another segment. But before we move on to that, let us just look at how, in the midst of everything that's happening with inflation, this same incapacitated and dysfunctional body of people, and they went on to pass something like this, which we don't even know what is going to be the follow-up to these amounts of money that are being released. To one of the issues was them playing a role in the Congo to fight ADF, and of course the insecurity they have created in Karamoja, and then the rest they're going to feast and eat. So I'm interested to know your point of view on this aspect, this supplementary budget that just got passed.
Thank you very much. That information is very revealing. First of all, I want to send the biggest bravo to our young people, those students at the universities, who, out of their own initiative, staged that demonstration and risked their lives to express what is on the heart of every Ugandan, inside and outside Uganda. I send you my greatest bravo. Keep it up. That is the only way we can succeed. And a shame to those who have turned deaf ears to your cry. Two, you have brought up that Article 85 of Museveni's constitution. You don't call it Uganda constitution because that has nothing to do with Uganda. Museveni, that Article 85, when you see it, it left an open-ended door for the parliament to decide. Now, picture this. You bring hyenas to what they call that place where they kill the cows, Rufra. I don't know what they call it in the slaughterhouse. I think it's called Rufra. I don't know where it's somewhere. I think it's somewhere near Mukono, isn't it? Somewhere out there. Anyway, that's where they slaughter the cows. This slaughterhouse or Rufra in Uganda. Now you bring the hyenas and they tell them that you are now going to compose the local government of this area and you are going to administer how cows are going to be slaughtered and how meat is going to be distributed, where so much meat is going to be transported to and all that, and the details. Anyway, do you expect those hyenas really to manage that slaughterhouse well? Of course not. Of course not. That's what this thing was purposely left open-ended so that they can go in there and get rich quick. Because they have the, in Uganda we say, he has a kambe n'ennyama. They have the meat in their hands and they have the knife to cut the meat. So do you think they are going to cut a small piece for themselves and give the rest to the village? No, heck no. You are seeing it in this budget, how much they have allocated to State House and how much they have allocated to the president. Each one is in 80-something billion shillings. And yet, when it came to the local administrations, the amount is not even closer to 30 billion. That makes it even less than 1/10 of what they have allocated to Museveni. And if I can look at that State House, although some people claim that it is Museveni and his wife, but I would say there is a lot more to it than that. Because all the ghosts of the people he has killed are sleeping in the State House. So you have to allocate some money for them to eat. So it is Museveni, Janet, and all the ghosts of the people he has slaughtered. So maybe that fits the budget. I don't know. I would have to look at it differently. Now, they have a budget for celebration of Uganda Matters Day, for celebration of the Muslim Supreme Council elections, for the whatever the Catholic Diocese of, is it Fort Portal? And then the Diocese of Mbale. These are religious issues. They have nothing to do with the bloody parliament. We are dealing with public money. Do you want a Muslim's tax contribution to finance Catholics? I don't mean the Muslim is going to be mad, but it's unfair. Because the taxes you have in the pot for the entire country are coming from everybody, including Muslims and the pagans. And you want them to finance the Catholic celebration of the Uganda Matters? That's not fair. This is never done. Personally, I'm a Catholic. I've been to all the holy places, including the Vatican. I've been to celebrations of August 15th in Lourdes and Fatima. But you do not ask Muslims or Protestants to contribute to the celebration of the Catholic celebration of August 15 in Lourdes or Fatima. You don't. Leave it to the Catholics, they'll take care of it. If the Muslims are going to celebrate Eid, they don't ask me for money. And I have Muslim friends, including in my own family. They don't ask me for money to contribute because they are going to celebrate Eid. However, they can invite me as a guest. And I have been invited to a lot of Eid's celebrations by my friends who are Muslims. But they don't ask me, please, would you send us $100? We are going to celebrate Eid. That is a religious affair. Leave it to them. They'll take care of it. They know what to do with it. It shouldn't. Anyway, these hooligans in the parliament, they are always looking for where they can eat public funds. And I can bet you 50% of it is eaten by those bastards who appropriated it. Now, they have appropriated money for ADF, supposedly fighting ADF, but we already know the whole purpose why they went into Congo. It's not ADF, because ADF doesn't exist. This is money beefing up the operations of M23 in Congo. In Karamoja, the same thing. Muhoz is out there killing the Karamajongs so that they can depopulate the land, bring the Batusi recruits from Eastern Congo and Rwanda, and help the Muzungu dig out the gold, because the Batusi from Rwanda and the Congo are not interested in the gold. They just want to graze their cattle. And the Muzungu is going to be digging out the gold and the marble and the uranium, which are in Karamoja. And Muzungu is going to be very happy. He's going to fund them and even give them the guns, because those guns are not made in Nansana. No, they're from Muzungu country. So we got to be careful. We have to be careful. We as Ugandans, we the indigenous Ugandans, leave alone some of our people who are stupid enough to follow the advices from their bedroom partners. We are going to defend our country against the onslaught of these invaders who are nothing but Batusi. Behind them is the Muzungu. This is what we have to watch out for. And the more we know it, the better we are prepared to defend ourselves, because we are going to win. We are the majority, and we are right. We are right on this cause, and always right is mighty.
I think
you
it's
mentioned
something that
about the 650 budgetary. I'll make a comment on that. You said that this budget supplementary budget of 650 billion was passed without even producing the budget committee report, and they just voted for it. Well, yes, that goes. We really don't need a parliament in Uganda. I think the parliament is Museveni, Janet, Salim Saleh, and their daughter, whatever her name is, and Rwabogo, and a bunch of other Eri Tumwine. That's the parliament. Once they decide this is what we want, they put it on paper. Whether the parliamentary committee had some so-called official discussion over this, it doesn't matter. We don't need it. And you had that man say, we are going to improve. I didn't ask you for improving. I want something presented that is legal and a procedure. And you don't have it. Go back, bring it, then we shall discuss later. But no, because that secret parliament, which sits in Salim Saleh's living room or in the State House at Nakasero, has decided that's what they are coming to rubber stamp. We don't need this parliament. I think it should be thrown away.
Rightfully said, Mr. Kintu. But in terms of, for our viewers as we go forward, to start to understand how this parliament is only, because I think what we're trying to communicate right here is that the parliament as it exists is only an opportunity for people to go in there and get rich quick. They are not going to resolve any of the issues or problems that we have. They might, before they start their service, share the same sentiment, but at the end of the day, the systematic ways of the parliament are there to establish that the majority, that most of the proceedings, if not all, and in this case where we are at in Uganda right now, is all of the proceedings are in favor of the system at hand. So I would like to ask the producer to please go on to our next slides on there, as we're going to start looking at the amount of money that actually Ugandan parliamentarians get in their forms of would-be service and future avenues, because we have to keep in mind that it's not about how much they're earning now. They even have the audacity to ask for more money through other different future avenues for their own benefit. So if the producer could please go on to the next slide. So on the next slide, we can see that every member of parliament is entitled to a new car, because this is even not part of their salary. They get a new car when they enter parliament, and every member is given about 150 billion shillings to purchase vehicles at the beginning of their 5-year term, and it was increased to 165. But this year, when they did come into parliament, every member of parliament got about 200 million. Because sometimes we forget so much as citizens what's happening, but they got about 200 when they started their parliamentary terms. And then on top of that, they get all these mileage allowances that are between 10 to 30 million shillings for every prime minister per month. And the legislatures are also entitled to night travel, so they travel differently during day and night. The money that is paid for transportation during day, I laugh, but it's because a big irony and just daylight robbery is happening, whereby if you're getting paid or given money, let's assume that, okay, you're given money for your daily transportation. I don't see what separates night travel from day travel. But Ugandan members of parliament get about 150,000 shillings per night when they travel within the country. And they get 1.9 million shillings per night when they travel foreignly. They get 1.9 million, I repeat that, every night that they spend abroad. They are also entitled to an iPad to help them conduct research. I don't know how much research they have done thus far, and also follow proceedings during debate. And then the MP's pay package also largely goes untaxed. As we'll see in future slides, they only tax 11 million of their total salary. For tax purposes, they usually present only 6 million shillings, which is the basic salary after tax, while between 15 and 25 million is not untaxed. If the producer could please go to the next slide. So in that regard, in total, the current budget standing for Uganda, recently the budget that was approved, we had a budget that was approved by Parliament for 48 trillion. It's a 48 trillion budget, and we must remember that this is just debt that we have to pay back as a nation. And as of December 2021, Uganda's total debt burden was up to 73.5 trillion. And none of this money is going to the servicing of the people and our daily the services that people need within the nation. None of this money has been used for that attribute. So Mr. Kintu, on the next part, to what the next point that I wanted us to speak on is, yes, there is commendations for students, and the students did come out and they did bring our attention and notice to what was happening with the inflation. But the problem with that and Ugandan politics and parliamentarians and how the political field is being run, once the students came out and went on strike, the nurses wanted to come on strike as well, the teachers were coming on strike as well, traders union wants to come on strike as well, then here we get a political agenda. I feel we play too much in the multi-political party scheme that I think Museveni set up for his success. Have a multi-party system to enable his party to always rise to the top. So yet again, we start to see not only parliamentarians, but political parties take over the discussion on inflated commodity prices. So recently, you must know that opposition leader Kizza Besigye was arrested, and now there is demand for his release for protesting highly inflated prices. But the problem was not about a political leader being arrested. The problem is the highly inflated prices that people were bringing attention, the people wanted attention to be brought to. But now it seems like the multi-party system has hijacked the conversation. And here we have, of course, a member of parliament from opposition speaking about, and this is Matthias Mpuga, talking about how much they can get involved in this discussion further. He says that we issued the statement in Parliament on behalf of our party relating to the running away of prices on essential goods, but the regime hasn't considered anything. We asked them to cut on high taxes, to turn down their appetite for expenditure, but nothing has been considered. But it's funny how the appetite of expenditure, he still gets paid as well. He's part of the expenditure. Said Matthias Mpuga, who's the MP for Nyendo Mukungwe, further shifting the burden to Ugandans, who he said should be triggered to rise up since the ruling national resistance movement has ignored their concerns. Ugandans should rise up against bad governance and stop questioning what opposition leaders are doing, Mr. Mpuga said. He continues to say that stop questioning why we have not joined. Don't wait for Robert Kyagulanyi to do anything. Do it yourself. Kyagulanyi is a leader. Equally, you're a leader in your own capacity because you head a family that is constrained. We want to invite, and then he continues to say, we want to invite fellow citizens to be alive. To be alive. It is a matter of time. If you want to change it tomorrow, you will have it tomorrow. I want to invite citizens to participate in every way. I want to invite you to participate in every activity that will quicken the new Uganda. Citizens, we want to invite you to participate. All of us have a duty, and that duty must be played by everyone who feels affected, who feels offended by the ongoings in this country. While we were still trying to cipher this in, of course, also the spokesperson, Joel Sinyani, chimed in this whole conversation. And he also said on the next slide that he continues with the same sentiment that we have said this before. It is not about us. Anybody can take part in the protest. This should be about Ugandans, not us. Mr. Senyonyi, who represents Nakawa West in Parliament, said, we have participated in protests before and some people have refused to participate. Funnily enough, half of this whole reasoning I agreed with. It is not about the political parties. It's not about the political figures. It more has to do with the inflated prices and the people and how people are being affected. But then my question is, it is the same parliamentarians and the same political figures that get to talk about these issues on the national stage and not get attacked, but also when they get attacked or imprisoned, like what we've seen happen with Dr. Kizza Besigye, now it has become an inter-party problem where FDC, supported by DP, because DP came out, Mao came out, and said, we support Dr. Kizza Besigye and what he's doing, protesting with the people, and now trying to fight NUP, which also won't come out and show support for the people and protest. But it's not about that. So we seem to be in that confusion, if it makes sense to a certain extent. And I would love for you to try and help us see, not only because what they do and what they continue to do for our audiences, maybe for us to understand that it is just continued confusion that will not resolve us to liberating ourselves, because none of this has to do with not only bringing attention to the inflated prices, but also bringing resources to people who have been heavily affected by this. If anything, it would just guarantee more parliamentary members from different parties to go to the same parliament and get paid the same high inflated salaries that they get and loot out of Ugandans.
Yes, you are right. As you've been explaining this tragedy, I scratched in my brains and remembered about a year and a half ago, I have a good friend of mine who is a very, very staunch UPC supporter.
Mm.
One time we were discussing, and I asked him a question: is there no national consciousness among the people, especially the so-called political, religious, or cultural leaders in Uganda? Is there no feeling for the common man in Uganda? He said, Kintu, where have you been? Which planet do you live on? I said, what do you mean? He said, when it comes to Uganda, the only thing that matters is one's pocketbook and his belly, or rather stomach. Everyone is out to eat, feed himself, and fill up his pocketbook. This was long before we started even discussing these so-called different budgetary designs which have been created in State House and handed over to these so-called parliamentarians just to rubber stamp it. When you were reading about the different breakdowns, even my simple arithmetic just failed me. I couldn't even add it up. I just failed. It became overwhelming that I said, forget it. I'm not even going to bother counting and adding. No wonder there is no salary for the doctors and the teachers, because these hyenas are eating everything there is in the slaughterhouse. That's what they have done, and that's what they are doing, and that's what they are going to continue doing until we whip their butts and get the hell out of there. We have to, because we are going to waste our time just enumerating whatever crap they are passing out from there behind. It's too much. It's too much for the country. The country is dying, and we are here wasting our time. This is not a time to sit and enumerate. They talk to the different political parties. They are trying to make it a party conflict, which is full of baloney. You remember very well when they said, we are withdrawing the election case and we are removing it from the court to the public court. Okay. And this man has said a very wonderful statement. Who is that? The NUP member of parliament. He said, you people, it is time for you Ugandans to rise up. If there is anything that you feel is unfair or hurting you, rise up. He's totally aloof because he himself is already comfortable. He's making 50 million shillings a month. Heck, I would be smiling all the way to the liquor store, if not to the bank. And he says, it's up to you because you are the ones who are suffering. I am not suffering. I'm okay. You rise up. Now, let me tell you, he has made a very good statement for us. We are rising up not only against those who are creating the suffering, but even those who are creating confusion. Because by creating a confusion, you are keeping the people who believe in you at bay so that they cannot come up with a solution. Now, as a political leader, you are expected to give guidance. If you have failed on your job, get the hell out of here. As a leader, you are supposed to give guidance. If you remember, someday when I was talking about leadership, I said a good leader must have his head above the clouds and his feet on the ground. Are your feet on the ground? Are you sharing the pain of your people? Are you understanding that your people are hurting? That they cannot afford soap or salt or sugar? I have a good friend of mine, unfortunately, he's now dead. And he was a very, very prominent lawyer, quite well-to-do, not a commoner like the rest of people riding border. He was a very successful lawyer. and announced that he's dead. I can mention his name. His name was Joseph Balikudembe. Those of you who knew him, he was not a poor guy. We met somewhere, and I asked him, please, could you buy me 2 semutundu? Enkalu, bring them to me. I'll refund you your money because I like to eat semutundu. He said, oh, sure, I'll buy it. He bought it, and when we met, he handed me the package of 2 big semutundu, dry ones, and I gave him the money. And guess what he told me? He said, you know, I am not a poor man compared to the average Ugandan in Kampala, but I cannot afford to feed my family with semutundu. Now, if Joseph Balikudembe, let his soul rest in peace, cannot afford to feed his family with the dry semutundu, how about Yokosofati and Kevina in Matuga, in Chamaganda, in Iganga? My son is this person called Kevina, Yokosofati, Yusufu, Musa, out there in Budu or in Gomba or in Bulemezi. What can they afford to eat? If an affluent gentleman like the late Joseph Balikudembe could not afford to feed his family with the same tune, if he was not dead, what would his answer be to me today, given the way the situation is? He could even probably tell me he cannot afford to buy a bar of soap. That's what these people are fighting for. That's why these kids were able to go on the street and demonstrate. And that is why this MP, who himself is already pocketing 50 million shillings a month, doesn't give a damn. Said, well, if you feel you are being hurt, rise up and go raise hell to the government. I'm not coming with you. That's what he's saying to you. If I have misunderstood him, let him come and correct me. Now, if Besigye has joined the crowd, let us not read into his interior motives. But one thing he has demonstrated, his feet are on the ground. And I can't claim to be a supporter of Besigye for political purposes. No. I want to see all our political leaders, all our religious leaders, all our cultural leaders also having their feet on the ground and say, hey, the waters are dirty and they are full of thorns, and we can feel the pain our people are feeling. When you saw the demonstrations in Cairo and Khartoum and anywhere else, including Sri Lanka, there were university professors, there were religious leaders, there were traders, students, farmers, carpenters, mechanics, everybody, as citizens, as wananchi, as indigenous people of those countries, joining hands to fight what was recognized as injustice. Are we seeing that in Uganda? Where are all these other leaders in these categories we have mentioned? Where are they? Nowhere. Because they are eating well. And the youth are the ones who are bearing the brunt. That is what is lacking in our country. That is what is killing Uganda. But I have a warning for you. All these people you see being squeezed out of life, When they are finished, you are next. And by the time they get to you, there will be nobody crying for you. What I'm saying has happened in many countries. It happened in Mexico many years ago. It happened in Romania. It happened in Kazakhstan. It happened in Cambodia. Lucky enough, in Cambodia, they had Pol Pot. He helped to clean up that place. Maybe that's what we need in Uganda. Pol Pot. And if at all we have a Pol Pot, don't cry for me, because I'm not going to be there. It is very, very unfortunate that those who are purporting to be political leaders are actually confusing agents, implicitly supporting the dictator who is inflicting pain on us. They don't realize it right now because they are being bluffed by the secret donations they are receiving from this dictator at night, or by Neptunian relationships they have with those people who are connected with the dictator. And that is not going to help you. People, wake up. We are not criticizing you because we hate you. No. We are criticizing you because we want you to come out of the wrong route and work with the people and be honest, be straight. If you cannot be honest, then please shut your mouth and let people who can fight for the liberation of Uganda continue. Because even if you join this struggle, there are people who have been in it for many years and they are not giving up yet. Honesty is important, ladies and gentlemen. Honesty and faithfulness to the cause. You had those tapes of the Congolese people. There are more. I have listened to several of them. And what surprises me, when those Congolese, there is one when they were tearing down the posters of Kagame and the Rwanda flag, when they were announcing the word Congolais, you could hear it, even when you don't understand their language. You could hear the emphasis of, they were saying, we Congolais, we the Congolese. Do we have that in Uganda? Do we have that emphasis of we Ugandans? And yet these Batusi, they have it. We are going to exterminate you. When they say we the Batusi. And they are united. Whether one is from Congo, calling himself a Munyamulenge, or from Gomba, calling himself a Muraro, or from Uganda, calling himself a Muhima, or from Kigali, saying I'm a Mutusi. They are all one. And they are focusing on you. And yet you are becoming divided. And I have heard some of our fellow Ugandans saying, we don't believe in differences in tribes or differences. Yes, you cannot say you don't believe it. But if you are a Musoga and I'm a Muganda, you are a Munyoro, it's not a curse. And you should be proud of being a Munyoro, proud of being a Musoga, or Rugubaro or Madi. But we are united as Ugandans because we are not the only country which has different ethnicities. That's why the federal system we talk about is so important. We are different but united as Ugandans. We are Ugandans from the tribe or the nation of Karamajongs or Kakwa or Batoro or Banyankole or Baganda. We are Ugandans. And even the Congolese, they have the Barua, Batetera, Bakongo, But you name it, they got different tribes, you know, but they are united as Congolese, and they are now fighting as Congolese. Because what kills a Mutetera is the same that kills a Bandundu, kills a Kasai, kills a Muruba, kills a Bakongo. They are all together as Congolese. And when, as I said, when they say Ngai Congolais, he's not saying I'm a Muruba. No. Ngai Congolais is a Congolese. That's what we should understand and work on. But this, when he's Congolais, he's looking at the Batusi from Rwanda who are killing their people. And they have killed over 10 million people. You think that's a small number? How many Congolese are now out in the exile? You've seen pictures of them flocking to Uganda with their little belongings on their head, everything behind. That kind of suffering. And if you cannot internalize it and see that these are human beings who deserve our compassion. I wrote that document more than 10 years ago. The death of compassion. If you do not have that, then I don't know how you were born and which religion you profess. Because no matter whether you are Christian or Muslim, you have that compassion for other people. And if you don't have it, then you are walking dead, as the result tells you. We need that compassion, ladies and gentlemen. We need that unity and understanding of our country, our suffering. It is time for these university students to be out on the street, and so should you be, whichever political party you belong to. And this is not a political party conflict. No. It's a human conflict. It's a human suffering that we are all addressing ourselves to. Lock arms, lock horns, fight the dictator, get rid of him. Don't even think in terms of, oh, they gave me a brand new car, they gave me this, they gave me that. I'm going to be quiet because my bank account is now fat. When your people are being killed and when your turn comes, you're not going to go with that new bulletproof car, nor with that bank account in the coffin. You're going to go there naked. I hope I have expressed my anger and sentiment, because this is very much in my heart. And that's why I'm here, to express my feelings for the suffering of our people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kintu. And I think this has shed light to the different levels of where we stand and where we can choose to pick up and go. Nationalism, we need to build nationalism as a nation in order for us to survive, but we cannot build nationalism without recognizing our indigenous backgrounds and communities. So in order to continue, because the next segment is even harder than the first segment, because it's adding salt to injury, we will first go on a very short break, and then we will come back with the last segment of our show. The number will be on the screen, so if you want to send in your messages or or call us, please, now is the time to get ready to do that, as we will come back with the last segment of the show right after the break.
The importance of a federal system of governance in Uganda. 1. Federalism restores peace and regional stability. 2. Federalism promotes political participation. 3. Federalism encourages economic development across the country. 4. Federalism provides multiple levels of government action. 5. Federalism accommodates a diversity of opinions. 6. Federalism protects against tyranny of the majority. 7. Federalism promotes unity without imposing uniformity. Register today and join the UFCC Assembly by visiting www.ufcc.uk.
Chief Justice Owinyi Dolo is a former private lawyer to Tibuhaburwa and involved in the constitutional change of the term limit in 2005. Whilst in 2017, he also participated as panel judge in the infamous constitutional change of the age limit, famously known as Tojikwatako, which gave Tibuhaburwa a further hand at impinging on the Ugandan people's human rights. In all cases, he has been involved as panel judge, including Dr. Chiza Besige's election petitions. He has served the dictator's interests. Michael Chibita is a former private secretary of Museveni, aka Tibuhaburwa. Overwhelming evidence from the survivors and victims of the Museveni state terror suggests that Michael Chibita frustrated, blocked and subverted justice in all the high-profile murder cases that occurred just before or during his tenure as the Directorate of Public Prosecution, DPP, of Uganda. These cases include Nsenga, Afande Haji Sebagala, Magistrate Mafabi, Wilberforce Wamala, and many more, including delayed justice for massacre businessman Godfrey Katoka Juri. The families of the murdered people have never received justice. Those who narrowly survived the premeditated murders continue to live in fear and are now refugees abroad. Extrajudicial kidnappings and killings of Ugandans have only worsened due to the impunity that Chibita has actively participated in. These cases are among many that have been lodged at the International Criminal Court, ICC, against Tibuhaburwa. Don't forget that Tibuhaburwa appointed Chibita in all the positions he has held to date, as his former private secretary, legal judge of the High Court, DPP, as Supreme Court judge, and now as a member of the petition panel to seal the rubber stamp to Tibuhaburwa's rigged victory.
Welcome back from that short break. And right now we will head on to our last segment of the show for today. So, Mr. Kintu, as I said before, the studio line is on the screen if you'd like to start sending in any questions, commentary, or further discussion that we can have around this. But to wrap up the show, Mr. Kintu, I wanted us to speak of the Constituency Development Fund. So the Constituency Development Fund, and if the producer can show that on the screen, was discontinued in 2011, and this was because first let's start with what the Constituency Fund was. This was a fund for every MP. It was abolished in 2011, and that was because there was no accountability if money went. Most of these members of parliament had put burial costs and school fees as the place where most of the money was going. They would get 10 million shillings in this fund, and it was taken away. So the fund was taken away after it faced accountability issues. But however, in 2019, Usa County Member of Parliament Peter Ogwang said that there is plan to table a bill in the 11th Parliament, which is the current serving Parliament, and MPs including Jacob Oboth and Paul Mwiru support the reintroduction of the Constituency Development Fund. That if it works in countries such as Kenya, it can also work in countries such as Uganda. They believe that there is need to cater for the increasing pressures that members of parliament are facing in their constituencies. So in addition to everything, a fund that already was scrapped for its lack of accountability has been tabled as a bill for these members of parliament to receive more funding. So if we go to the last slide to really sum up how much members of Uganda's parliament are making, and we've said before 50 million, but when we add everything together, for people who want to know just how much it is, what was recently approved, so they get 6.5 million in housing allowance, they get 19 million mileage allowance, 17 million constituency allowance, they get 11 million salary, and this is it's their salary, that's the only one that is proportionally taxed, and then 1.7 million to just, any jobs or small activities they have to do around town while working. So they're getting a total of 55.2 million every month for their salary. So I think Mr. Chida, I wanted us to wrap up with people having a realization that members of parliament in a parliament such as this that is not there to do any legislative business is only going to end up being paid more ridiculous amounts. And just for us to talk about this price breakdown that exists in today's parliament.
This is very tough, and it's tough not in the sense that it is incomprehensible, but it is tough in a sense that it just makes you so angry. So angry that you can see people you think have brains, and yet they behave even worse than monkeys in the zoo. One thing, let me tell you, from the historical perspective, everyone knows that there was Hitler, and everyone singularizes Hitler. Hitler did this, Hitler did this. But ladies and gentlemen, Hitler had many, many people around him and under him carrying out those heinous crimes against humanity. And if you remember, or if you can go and research the Nuremberg trial, I think there was a group of 19 people, if I remember the number. It was somewhere around 19. Among those were some journalists who were convicted for purposely writing propaganda stuff to justify Hitler's criminal actions. Don't we see that in our Ugandan newspapers today? Or don't we see some of those people on social media broadcasting some crazy stuff just to confuse and blackmail those who are standing up against the dictatorship or against the injustice? We are seeing it. There were some politicians, there were some judges, there were some policemen who carried these outrageous criminal actions. And I remember one of them, when they asked him a question in that trial, he said, "I was carrying out orders from above." That's what this stupid judge you've just brought about. And I'm saying it's stupid because I'm trying to honor him. Not to abuse him, but to honor him. Because he's carrying out orders from above. They told him, go there and screw up the case so that Tibuhaburwa comes out clean. Yes, sir. And this other idiot who purported to be Director of Public Prosecution, look what he did. How many people have been killed as a result of his criminal decisions. When we have the Nuremberg trial, those are going to be among the 19 that will be hanged. Over there in Nuremberg, they hang them. I've seen the pictures. You can find those pictures on the internet or in some books. They hang the bastards because of their crimes. And Hitler was not around to help them. Now, you've said that there is no accountability to the Constituency Development Fund. Well, we do not do things because Kenya is doing them. If we wanted to copy what Kenya does, why don't we copy what Kenya does? That after every 5 years, they elect a president, and the president has a term limit. Why don't we copy that? The Constituency Development Fund is supposed to help that man who is elected to represent that constituency, be it my home area of Chotera, to buy out support by throwing favors, financial favors to people so that when the time for re-election comes, he has already sugar-coated them to support his candidacy. That's the whole thing. But in a federal government of Uganda, there will be no need for that because the federal government will have a rural development fund which will take care of whatever you've been envisaging in your brains right now. That the so-called development, what development we are talking about? Improving the water supply, providing clean water, cleaning up these little roads, we call them Burungi Bwansi. This will be done by the local government. You, as a representative of that constituency, your job is to make sure that whatever complaints people have in your constituency, you bring them up to the right authorities. If at all they said we are going to provide clean water to the residents of Chifukamiza in my home area, and it hasn't been delivered. Now it has been 6 months. What happened? That's your job. Go out there and scream. Then they are going to find out which official was sent to develop clean water for the residents of Chifukamiza, and he hasn't done it yet. It's not your job to go there and deliver clean water to the residents of that village. No. It is your job to represent them so that the services which have been appropriated by the government are delivered as planned. Now, if that money has been eaten by whoever, it is your job to go there and blow the whistle. Then we can bring that son of a gun who has stolen that money and question him. You were given 50 million shillings to do this, and what has been delivered to the people is worth less than $1 million. What happened to the other money? That's your job. Now, as an MP for that region, even this idea of appropriating a specific salary with all those amenities that have been thrown in, this is robbery, open robbery. These people are thieves. You members of Uganda Parliament, I'm sorry to tell you right in your face, you are thieves. And the people of Uganda should know what to do with a thief. And I hope they do it right now, because you are thieves. If they don't do it right now, they are going to do it someday. This has to stop. We cannot go on with this kind of corruption. No. There is no way building a nation under this kind of corrupt system.
But the fact that they do get paid 1.7 million a month just to drive around town on top of they already have money for their daily transportation. There is no guidelines for why they get paid these amounts. There is no explanation or accountability. And they still take home these huge amounts in the midst of mass suffering, when even the voters who voted for them are suffering. But of course, they say, if you want to know what's wrong with something, or no, I think Omulangira says it all the time. Ekyenyanja kitandika kuvunda ku mutwe, a fish rots from its head. So before even any further ado, we'll take a look at, the biggest thief of them all, who set up the matrix for everyone. I'd like to ask the producer to please play us that last video on how much we as a nation spend on State House.
It also spends 400 million shillings per day on his office. When you total this, it means we spend 2 billion shillings on the president every day. Mind you, the known daughters of the president have all been married off, and the known son has grown. He has even started a political movement called the National Progressive Movement. The president and his wife plus their workers remain the only occupant of State House. It will therefore be immoral for this parliament to approve 677 billion for a residence of just 2 adults.
Visit the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store to download the Afro.
So that is what's happening with our nation, whereby elected leaders, when asked to stand by us, they tell us we're on our own because they're getting paid and they're okay. And we're the only nation, amongst a few maybe, we can find other ones, spending 2 billion on the State House and the presidency every day. And we don't have a lot of money to spare. Accumulating debt as well. So the predicaments that we do find ourselves in are as pressing as yesterday, and really the onus is on us to fight against this. But also ultimately, I will side with you, Mr. Chintu, when we really, really let people know that members of Uganda's parliament are thieves. There is nothing above, below, beyond, out of this statement. They are thieves who are going to continue to benefit from this system until, like as Mr. Chintu has said, put their feet on the ground. But with that being said, we got our first message and we'll go ahead and then play that. And then, Mr. Chintu, you can help respond. So we'll play our first message from one of our viewers, Matthias from the States.
Desire and Mr. Remegio. Thank you so much for the program. As I was observing and listening, and also trying to draw a lesson on this topic of the day, how the Parliament of Uganda helped these MPs to become rich, and anybody that is seated in that house, it was not an accident that to happen that way. It was a plan by this unitary government to keep them in power for a long time, as they can, as they wish. All these programs were designed for them to be kept them in power. How to feed the MPs with all large amounts of money, not even to have anything to say against about the government. All these programs to take care of the kids, take care of the education, take care of the fellow citizens who are suffering, is not going to happen when this unitary government is in power. The only solution for this kind of atrocities or this kind of anonymous problem that affecting our fellow Ugandans is to have the federal system of governance that will elaborate, will control all these horrible, horrible crimes which is done by these MPs and other government as well. We can discuss about what's going on in Uganda, the money, the corruption, the stealing, but all has been designed for that, for this unitary government to be kept in power. Unless the Ugandans are waking up and say enough is enough, time up to fight for this atrocities, for this madness. I can call it madness. But the madness which are taking our people to be killed in such kind of nasty programs, they need to come up and say enough is enough, fight for changing of the government by embracing the federal system of governance will really help us to bring our country back. So I'm calling the federal governance to come up and run the federal system of governance the way how it handles the business of governing of the country, so that they can be able to embrace it and come out and take their Uganda country as theirs. Thank you so much for the program. Wish you all the best in all our federal revolution. Have a lovely evening and a lovely morning and a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Matthias, for your message. And there was a message from one of our viewers. Message you too if you would like to respond.
I appreciate that gentleman's comment. They are right on the ball. Because, as he says, these people, and he agrees, these people are thieves. And the system was set up so that they can feed each other. Museveni knew what he was planning to impose upon Uganda. So he had to design, as I said in his constitution, that Article 85. Was it 85? Whatever the number is. Yeah,
Yes.
Article 85. It was designed purposely to create the conditions, so much so that whichever animals you bring to the table, you have the hyenas, the coyotes, the jackals, and said, okay, you take that piece, I'll take this. Now, if I have taken a bigger piece, you cannot look at my plate and say, oh, how come you've taken the whole leg? Well, I gave you the whole arm anyway, or the whole neck. Take whatever you want. And if you want more, I can give you a little bit more, but please don't complain about how much I have piled up on my plate. That is why the State House can spend 400 million shillings a day. Well, Museveni told us to eat muwogo, cassava. I think his cassava is very expensive because he's spending 400 to eat cassava a day, just like the rest of the commoners. In any case, that is the way he's eating. And you guys who could probably complain in the parliament, well, you are also eating. I allowed you to eat 60 million shillings a month. Well, when you were a primary teacher out there in Kaboko, were you making that kind of money? Heck no. When you were selling mandazi in Kamocha, were you making that kind of money? Heck no. So be quiet, just sit there and eat. And when I bring in my slice, hey, don't complain that I'm taking a big chunk. You eat, I'm eating, we are both eating. Forget it. Let's be happy. That's what this man designed, and he's doing it. And for that reason, I would say, you people of Uganda, if you really want to save this country, this is where it's start. Grab those MPs and whip a shit out of them, or what else you can do. As one Musoga said, put your body where it belongs. Let's start from there. But for God's sake, do something. Don't sit here and enumerate the suffering. We already know. We are feeling it. We have seen our children being buried, and others don't even have a grave. We don't need any more information about how many people have died. We have seen enough. One is already too many. Now, do something. This is where start with those blood MPs. Do something. They live in your neighborhoods. They go to your same churches or mosques. They drink with you. Their children go to the same schools like yours. And the funny thing that they do, which you can't, when they get sick, they are thrown outside. Now there is one guy on whose hands he has so much blood of people he killed in the so-called anti-corruption when he was so damn corrupt himself. Now that he's sick, they flew him to America for treatment. But you, Yoko Sefat, in Muduma, you can't even be flown to Nairobi for treatment. And you tell me that is fair? This is where you start. Start with these coyotes and those who are sitting with the hyena from State House to eat our meat. This is where you start. Whip a shit out of them. And I mean it. That's when things are going to start warming up, because we are dying. We are dying.
That's true.
Thank you very much for that comment. I'm glad you brought it up.
So, Moses Shintu, will hear from some others of another viewer, and this is from Prince Nachivinge, residing in Germany, and this is their comment.
Good evening, Mr. Kintu. Good evening, Desire. Thanks for the show. Banange mwebale kutuweereza nze mbebaza bwebaza wabula nze kyensaba nga wetunaba tukola constitution yaffe badde nsaba oba babuyita buwaayiro oba penal code tuteekemu akawaayiro akagenda okunoonyereza ku ssente buli munnabyabufuzi z'afunye mu parliament kubanga okusinziira Mr. Kintu nga abantu abatuula nga batandika okulwanyisa Idi Amin ne bajja mu parliament ne babba Museveni najja ne babba babadde babba budde tuba tusaba abantu banoonyerezebweko bonna bajja munnabyabufuzi yenna kati ate no parliament ya Kyagulanyi yati twetaaga okunoonyerezaako nnyo 100 ku 100 zikye ekiteeso kyange kyensaba kubanga parliament tulabira ddala nga babbi bakuba babbi abali mu masuuti abajja ne balimbalimba abantu era balaba bagenda ku malediyo naye nga bakola activity ezo okubanga babuzaabuza abantu baffe okuba ssente ye show ya muzungu nenzijogedde mu Luganda manyi ennaku zino aboogera oluzungu saawa zino kyetuligamba abantu baffe ku ground mutandika okwekingira buli muntu ajja ng'ayogera oluzungu obanga ayogera ebigambo kimu n'addamu oluzungu twatandise kampeyini eyo ku ground mpola mpola kubanga abantu bano bagenda ne balimba abantu baffe balaba omuntu ayogera nnyo oluzungu abantu kale mwebale kuweereza naye ng'ekintu ky'abantu bano bonna tubateeke kunoonyereza Kirala bannange tubeebaza. Thank you so much Mr. Kintu, thank you so much Desire, thank you so much UNN team. Tubeebaza nnyo bannange nti bye mutuweereza bwe tuba kati naffe twogera nga tetulina nsi tetulina kutya nti mutuwa ebintu bimaze okunoonyereza kale tusaba mwongere mu maaso okubanga mutuweereza ate n'okuba nti mukolera ddala research entuufu nti n'omuntu waba ayimiridde okwogera ku kintu kye yawulira ku sheeno akyogera ali confident akyogera alina reference kati nga Mr. Kintu tukola reference okusinziira ku bintu okubeewa gyano by'otuwa ate naye Desire team yamu nawe tugyebaza ku bintu byemukolako okunoonyereza mwebale nnyo mwebale ddala
Nawe weebale kusiima and that has been one of our viewers today appreciating and taking on the message. So if you'd like to also comment on that as well before we move on.
Yes, Prince Nachibinge, thank you very much for that encouraging comment. I want to assure you that investigation of stolen money, embezzled property, etc., is going to be carried out when the day comes. Right now, we have this job of removing these thieves and the murderers out of positions of power. The item number 1 on the agenda. After this has been accomplished, then there is no stone that is going to be left unturned. Investigation of stolen money by political leaders, by Museveni's family and his collaborators, contracts that have been given to Ugandans and non-Ugandans alike are going to be investigated and rectified. I told you before, and I repeat it again, this so-called pipeline of oil from Acholi and Bunyoro through Tanzania to the Muzungu lands has to be stopped immediately. That oil has to be refined within Uganda so that we have a policy on oil whereby oil distributed within Uganda has a controlled price. And as you know, let's put it this way, we may produce 1 million gallons of oil a day. Uganda can only consume, say, 10,000, okay? The rest of the oil will be exported. We shall export it on the going international market price. But the Ugandan must not be squeezed. The oil, the petrol that is consumed, as I said, allocate, say, 10,000, if that is the figure per day, for Uganda consumption needs, that has to be on a controlled price, whereby Ugandans can say, we are benefiting from what God gave us in our own soil. The rest of this petroleum be exported, but it has to be refined in Uganda. It has to be refined in Uganda. And the company which is going to refine it in Uganda is not going to be Exxon or Mobil Oil.
Total.
No. It is going to be a corporation which is publicly owned by Uganda in collaboration with the foreign owners, because we don't have the technology yet. So we have to partner with some foreigners, whoever they are. We shall find that out. Now, there are people, you've said, the current MPs and whoever is going to be there, they have amassed billions. It's not in millions, billions. I hear of someone who owns a good number of maybe 10 big commercial buildings in Masaka. And I ask myself, I have asked people from there, I said, how did he make that money to buy or build those commercial buildings in Masaka? They said, Vakubigambo, the man is filthy rich. We have to find out what was his salary, which position he was occupying in the government, what was his salary, how much was he spending on maintaining his family, and how did he come up? I told you a story of a man in Mbezi, Tanzania, who committed suicide because when Magufuli said, we are going to audit everybody to find out, how did you make this kind of money at the salary you were earning from your position? His position was not even a minister. It was one of those low positions. But he had 9 buildings in a place called Mbezi, which is a very affluent neighborhood of Dar es Salaam. And each house was worth more than $5 million US. How did you get these buildings? When he knew Magufuli was coming on auditing, he went and bought a rope and hung himself before Magufuli reaches him. Well, I hope these bastards will do that in Uganda. Then we don't have to waste time investigating them. Just grab whatever they left behind. But this is going to be the way. And let me tell you, ain't no compromise on this. No. Because we have been robbed too much. And this money is going to be retrieved. Whatever they have hidden outside the country, we're going to find it, and we are going to go for it, whether it is in Dubai, Sweden, Switzerland, United States, UK, Bahamas. I know they have some in the Bahamas. We're going to get it. And that money is going to be brought back and rebuild our hospitals, our schools, our whatever they have destroyed. So, Prince Nachibinge, rest assured, we are sowing the seed. Whether I will be there or not, someone has heard me. They are going to investigate that money and they are going to bring it back. That's why we are putting it on record, so that everyone knows that we are not fooling around. This is our country. We are indigenous Ugandans, and we have to build our Uganda as indigenous Ugandans.
For our next viewer, this is a message from Ismail, who dwells in UAE.
I take this opportunity to thank our dearest Desire and Mr. Kintu for a wonderful program that you have presented to us. Thank you so much. I have 2 points to make. One is about our brothers and sisters in Congo. Actually, the videos that you've played shows us that, or teaches us that we shouldn't wait for any person or any outsiders to come and fight for us. It is within us to collect ourselves, join together, to be one person and fight for our rights, as our brothers and sisters in Congo are doing. And what the picture of our brothers and sisters in Congo they are showing is that they are giving us a challenge as Ugandans. And when you look at we Ugandans, we had a lot of sparks that could make us to stand up and try to fight for our rights, fight for our country, because we have faced a lot, but we decided to sit on ourselves. Yet we are being experiencing the same as the Congolese are experiencing. So this is a challenge to us. So let us wake up as Ugandans and also try the same. Thank you so much. My second point is about the parasites of Parliament. I call them the parasites of Parliament because we as Ugandans, we engaged into elections to put them where they are, thinking that we are going to get a good service from them. But they have decided to sideline themselves from us. And you can think of that we are paying taxes. What do we need from what do we need back is the good service that we get. But we are suffering, and a member of parliament come out and tell us that we have to fight for our own. It's right, we have to fight for our own, but why did we elect you there? And what have you showed us that you are part of us? Instead, you have showed us that the parasites of Parliament are not part of us. So how can we treat these parasites? By showing them that we can make them suffer also. So dear Ugandans, my fellow wananchi, we are passing through a lot. We have to show them, or we have to make them feel what we are feeling. Yes, they get a lot of money, 50 million per month, but they cannot come out with an idea of deducting from their salary to give it to the wananchi who put them into that positions. So, my dear fellow wananchi Ugandans, let us make them feel the same what we are going through. Thank you so much for a wonderful program. God bless you, and God bless Uganda.
And that was the message from Ismail. I want to thank you for tuning in and for sending that message.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Ismail. Let me ask everybody, please grab paper and write down this number. You got a pen and a paper? All right.
Yes,
because I cannot read it. I need someone to help me read it. Write down 292, comma 008, comma, 00, comma, 000, comma.
So was that 298 008 00,
292.
292?
It is 292 008
Yes.
000 000.
Okay. 000. Okay.
Okay. That's my quick calculation. If you multiply the 55.2 million times the number of 529 MPs, that is the amount we are banning every bloody month. No wonder there is no money for doctors and the teachers and the nurses.
Wow.
I can't even pronounce it in English. That's a month.
Wow.
That's a monthly expenditure. All these little coyotes sitting in that parliament. Now, when I say, let's start with these fools and whip the hell out of them. No wonder there is no medicine in Mulago Hospital. Being angry is not enough. I am more than angry. I think as one man, one Congolese once told me about Kabarebe, said, I want to eat the intestines of that stupid man. And I said, what will you do with the rest? Well, when I get his intestines, he's going to be dead. I said, you sure are angry. Honestly, look at this amount of money we are spending a month.
200
and you talk
trillion.
About there is no medicine. I think it's more than $1 trillion. I don't know. I can't even. Maybe some mathematicians will help us figure out how do you read that figure. This is where, and by the way, this is the easiest because these people are within our midst. We need to grab their butts and whip the hell out of them. Maybe we can save the country some money.
It's billion. We're spending 292 billion and 8 million Ugandan shillings on them, and this is minus, of course, the iPads that they get, the internet services that they are financed for, the medical coverage that they do get for them and their family members, and all the other adjustable accommodative fees.
That's a daily expenditure. I mean, a monthly expenditure.
Yeah, but
if they are getting 52.2 million a month, that's a monthly expenditure. Multiply that by 12 to get an annual expenditure.
Oh yeah, this number is the one that you gave. We're spending 292 billion and 8 million. And this is without their iPads or other gadgets. Yeah. And medical treatment for them and their family members.
Yeah, that is based on 55.2 million a month.
Yes. It is really, as you said, a tragedy and tragic.
It makes me so angry that they can rob that country and rob it clean to the bones. And then they come to you and pretend to be with you, that they are opposition or they are part of the government. in any case, none of them is there unless the big hyena has decided you will go through. Well, you saw what happened in this by-election replacing Oranya. He said, I want the son to be the next MP in that region. And these people just flocked there saying, we are going to run for that constituency. The man has already decided. And in the process, how many lives did you lose? A few of your supporters were killed. And in turn, look at how many were physically beaten, while the boss is standing there with his arms on the chest as if he's supervising the execution of whoever he didn't want within his own party. And you can be so blind enough to still follow that kind of a person? I think these guys need new glasses. Anyway.
I think they don't know how to.
Nice.
But I do hear you, Mr. Kintu, because you wonder as to why you would even steal behind Museveni's bloodshed. Like, why would you ever associate yourself with that? Maybe because many people think, oh, because I did not hold the gun, I'm not the one who killed. But the consciousness of serving in a Museveni-led parliament, it still holds the same weight, because you're enjoying life in the midst of mass suffering, genocide. You're there, you're participating, you're enabling, regardless of where you stand. And you cannot pretend not to know that. Was when we say genocide, we're not only talking about like now the deployment in Karamoja to wipe out and to depopulate the Karamojong area. We're talking about also genocide just out of pure negligence. You're Minister of Health and we don't have medicine in the hospitals. You're actively participating in the killing of civilians. You're in charge of education, and anyway, that was his wife. But the same applies to you. Any member of parliament not fulfilling their duty is an enablement of the systematic oppression that this regime has put on Ugandans. And the tip of the iceberg is, as we conclude, is that on top of ministers receiving this amount, Mr. Kintu, we haven't even accommodated or accounted for their offices. How many people work in their office? So if every member of parliament has an estimated amount of more than 32 people working in their office, and they have all these huge amounts of staff members, how much then are we really spending just for parliament to function? We're paying way too much for no service at all.
Well, Desire, you've mentioned office expense. Do these guys really have an office whereby they have people working for them? Well, if you talk about girlfriends and boyfriends and whatever, yes, that I would agree. But I mean, I live here in Washington, D.C. area, and I have worked with some people on Capitol Hill. I've been in offices of these senators and the congressmen. They have an office. Each one has an office on Capitol Hill. If I want to go visit my congressman, just Raskin, I can just walk into Capitol Hill and they'll tell me his office is in Rayburn Building. I'll go there and I'll find some people working for him. And what those people do, they help him analyze information, prepare documents and the figures and the data so that when he comes out to speak, he speaks intelligently. These guys are doing all the research. They're analyzing all the information and they are guiding him where it matters most, which issue is going to affect his constituency. Then you move back to his constituency. Each senator and each congressman has offices in the major cities of his home state. For example, a senator from Texas has an office in the city of Houston, an office in the city of Dallas, an office in the city of San Antonio, and probably an office in Amarillo, covering the entire state, whereby the local people who cannot come to him in Washington can go to his local office, present their issues, and then those boys there and the girls who work in that office transmit it to the boss while he's in Washington. Then he can present it to the bigger floor. And that's the way they operate. But if you ask our members of parliament, and you ask a member of parliament from Uganda, does he have a local office in Uganda whereby the local people can go to his office, present their issues so that he can represent them into parliament? Does he have an office in Kampala whereby I would go and look for him if I want, that I can come to Kampala and look for my MP from Uganda, and I'll find him on this street whereby his office is there and there are some people working in there? What I hear is, if you want, figure out where he goes for drinking or where his girlfriends are, that's where you're going to meet him. But not an organized office. When that parliament building was built way back then in the 1960s, that tower behind this front where the parliament sits, that tower where you had I think the police, I don't know if they are still there, the police headquarters, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and at one time even Obote had an office in there. That tower was supposed to be a tower of offices of members of parliament from different constituencies. So much so that if you came from Uganda or came from Chotera, you are looking for your member of parliament, they would say his office is on the second floor. And the member of parliament from Arua, oh, his office is on the 7th floor. You would go there, knock at the door, and present yourself. But these pharaohs who have very little brains when it comes to administration and organization of government, they left the members of parliament around the nightclubs and the restaurants, and that's where you find them with a briefcase surrounded by a couple of girlfriends, and that's it. Then you talk to him over a bottle of beer, tell him what brought you to Kampala, and they don't take it seriously because there is no official environment in which to transact legislative issues. No. You see? This is what we are missing. However, when the new Uganda comes, to follow the line of thinking of Prince Nakibinge, that building is going to be evacuated, and it is going to become what it was intended to be, offices of our legislators. If we need to build another building, yeah, we will. And then each legislator has an office in Kampala plus an office in his constituency, whereby some people who cannot travel to the capital can present their issues in that remote constituency where it comes from, in Fort Portal, or in Kasese, or in Kitigum, or Iganga, or Mbale, so that things can be coordinated and we will have real representatives of people, not coyotes that are here to eat. Because what we have right now, a bunch of thieves and coyotes.
So before we continue, maybe for our viewers, the producer is going to go ahead and show a video of just how parliamentary organization in other places functions. It's going to be a video of members of parliament from the Netherlands and how they get on by whilst serving, doing service-centered work. And then we'll come back to receive our last message and wrap up the show.
Eu tô fazendo vídeo. Vai correndo lá, tira uma foto, tira uma. Alguma coisa.
And that was a video of a member of parliament from, no, not a member of parliament, actually. It's the Prime Minister of the Netherlands going on a bicycle to his office. And as we know, even though the Netherlands remains a monarchy, the Prime Minister does have a little bit more swaying and waving political authority, and still rides his bicycle to work. I think we still have the biggest problems on our continent as whether we still are dealing with not only all these problems, but we're dealing with colonized people who their dream is to have all the materials that are thrown away by the colonizer. So the materialistic, consumerist view that most of these people have is just evident of our condition as a colonized people, but it still remains greedy, selfish, and out of place in the midst of mass suffering. So we'll listen to our last message, Mr. Chintu, and this is from Martha from Saudi Arabia. And
Yeah, when you were going to area where someone probably was with a lot of obstacles, ebivumo, but naffe tufunye bye tusomesa bye tuyigiriza nga baali amanyi bagambewo eyeweza mumba bye bazikuba with a lot of obstacles, ebivumo, but we managed to get abantu abo, and I'm really happy and grateful nti otusomeseza naffe tufunye bye tusomesa bye tuyigiriza nga baali batuguma like I'm really, really happy and I'm proud of myself. But I can do something better. I can even look for more. Together, ojigazia like okusomesa abana mpolampola wero bajja tebaagala naye kati ekintu bakyagala lwaki bayinga. Some of them are posting now on Facebook. I'm super happy. Good evening, Madam Desire and Mr. Chintu. I'm off topic, but my question to Mr. Kintu is, I have seen a military entering Uganda with the equipments. How are we going to sensitize our people? How are we going to overcome what is coming? Because in the end,
You are right. Ekijja kyokya, it is hot. It is, we have not seen, as the black Americans say, we ain't seen nothing yet. It is not going to be fancy. But knowing is the first step towards a solution. Woe to those who don't know that it is going to be hot, because they are playing at the tail of the tiger. But if you know that what is coming is no chicken feed, as some people would say, then it is up to you to start preparing accordingly. I think I mentioned this in one of my broadcasts before, that I got information about the plot to assassinate the late Laurent Kabila. And I passed that information to him through trusted channels. He sat on it for a month and a half, and during that month and a half sent me a message. He said, tell Mr. Kintu to come to Kinshasa and explain to me more about this plot. And I sent back the message. I said, what do you want me to do? I'm not the one who drew that report up. I only happen to get it through my trusted sources. Now deal with it. He didn't. And they killed him a month and a half later, exactly as they had planned it. Because they wrote it down, they planned it, how they are going to carry it out, how they are going to cover up the repercussions, and they hide everything. And then they put their names and signatures on them. I know them. I saw the document, and I was able to access it. And by the way, I can rightly tell you, this is, it's now past overdue. I got it from the office of the president of Brazzaville, where they drafted this plan. How many people have that kind of opportunity? And this fool sat there for a month and a half until they killed him according to the plot. Now, if you know what is coming is hot, for God's sake, get yourself ready. If you know a thief is coming to break into your house, hire extra guards at the gate.
Yeah.
But don't simply sit there and get drunk and leave the door half open, which he did. Now, Martha, you know what is coming. Talk to your people. Talk to your friends.
Yeah.
I am not raised about social media, but I have had Lumbuye warning Katumba Wamala over and over and over. Now, Katumba Wamala is under house arrest, was poisoned. He knew better. He should have known is the day they tried to kill him, and unfortunately they failed and they killed him. That is the day anybody with an ounce of brains would have woken up. But he didn't. He didn't. Because he, as we say, knowing is the starting point. His brains have failed to work so that he can know what is cooking. What has happened now is under house arrest, and they might finish him off anytime. So what do? Those of you who now know, take precaution, and those who still think, nze ndi mukoddomi waabwe, all right, keep being their mukoddomi. You wait until it boils down to your little behind. That's when you're going to know how hot it is.
And so we have another message, and this message is from Aisha from Busoga State. I'll go ahead and play that.
Kintu nidze mwebali kutuweeza nze ekibuuzo kyange kyenja okubuuza oba nja kwawukanaku ku mulamwa katono. Kintu mwavaayo ddezi mwatusomesa obubuya obwali mu banka. Abantu bangi batwalibwako amayumba gaibwe nga n'ennumba yaife yalugiiramu ennumba eri awo ku Kibuli ku Corner House. Eri awo Kibuli ku Corner House ya fulo 2. Bano abayibi ebintu by'abantu through banks. Bana gano agayibwa omunaabanga mugagemye abantu bano bajja kuyambibwa batya kubanga agamayumba bagatwalayo agandi bagasigaza ate ku busente obuziramu aye bajja bakubala webabanga ennumba yo bagenda bajja bakubala babone nga bakulemesa tegaana omunauganda ajja kuyambibwa atya gwe bayibye mu ngeri eyo.
And I think that question is to you, Mr. Kintu.
Yes, that is one of the many issues that the new Uganda will have to deal with. They have used the banking system to rob people of their properties. And if you look who are controlling the few financial institutions left, you are going to find that the Bavandimwe are the ones. And who is robbing the house, or rather who is taking the house when the bank pretends to be repossessing your house, is you're going to find that the same thing as Emovandimwe is the one who now says, this house belongs to me because I bought it from the bank which had repossessed it. We had a story a few weeks ago of a friend of mine, Professor Aloysius Rugira. Is now retired professor, lives here in Boston, Massachusetts. These Bavandimwe crooks wanted to rob him of his land. I think he owns the land somewhere near Rubowa area. And they fabricated death certificates from Mulago. This appeared in the local newspapers in Kampala. That Professor Rugira is dead and here is his death certificate. And so we are selling this piece of land which own because we now have the power of the attorney. And, you know, all the legal documents were presented, but they were all cooked. Why the man is still alive here in Boston? Now, if he's in Boston, why is the death certificate manufactured in Mulago Hospital? Was he there last week and died there? Now, the good thing about real estate and the physical properties is these Bavandimwe, no matter what they do, if some of them will run away, that is good, they better. If they don't run away, the investigative team, which is going to clean up that country, is going to find them. And the true owner is going to show up. If the true owner is not alive, his descendants are going to be alive.
Yeah.
And they are going to reclaim that property. And this problem, by the way, is not new. It has been around for centuries. And I want you, if you are investigating how true ownership cannot die, go read Greek mythology. In Greek mythology, by the way, this is more than 6,000 years before Christ. In Greek mythology, there is a story of Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. Oedipus, I think it is spelled Oedipus, E-D-I-P-U, Rex. Rex is a Latin word meaning king. Oedipus Rex by Sophocles. Go read that story. How stolen property was retrieved several generations after the rightful owner was killed, so that the greedy bastard grabbed it. In this case, the greedy bastard grabbed the throne and installed himself as the new king. Rightful prince was killed, but the prince left a child, and that child was in exile, never even knew he was a prince never even knew that in his family they owned a specific kingdom. So this would be a good thing for those of you who want to research on this. It is a very interesting story, by the way. I read it when I was an undergraduate, that is 100 years ago, and I still remember the story of Oedipus Rex. So it's very interesting. Read it. You're going to that property that worries you right now, be rest assured. When the investigative team is in action and these hyenas have been sent 7 foot under or swimming in Karuma Falls, your property is going to come back to you, because we need a thorough cleaning of the country, and we cannot compromise on that.
So, Mr. Kintu, for our next message, this said, this also came from, I don't know who the sender of this was, but they said all that money mentioned by members of parliament and others and their services does not reflect in the economy of Uganda. A question: where is the money? Where does the money go? And then I will go ahead and then play our last message for the day. And this is a message, of course, from Comrade Malik, and many know him as Professor Malik or Brother Malik. And I sent in a message as well. I'll go ahead and play this.
Hi, Lisa. How are you? And thanks for hosting the show. And thanks for hosting the show and bringing our elder, Mr. Kintu. Yeah, but you see why Idi Amin dissolved that parliament? Because it's useless. We don't need a parliament, and we have never needed one. Just look at the figures and the numbers that you just broke down there. Just imagine what that money would do. It will fix the broken infrastructure that we have in our country, making sure that we have proper facilities, making sure that hospitals are well kept and schools. But this is the problem that we have as a country. If I had power and leadership, I'll do what's necessary. I'll make sure that the money is recovered in any way possible. I'll make sure these MPs, they go into a specific concentration camp, serious hard labor, even if it's a minimum 10 years to recover wasted taxpayers' money that has been abused and corrupted. So we have serious issues that need to be taken care of as a country. Thanks for bringing the show. You take care, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Malik. Thank you for chiming in. And thanks for watching the show. And Mr. Kintu, any commentary on the last two messages that we got, and then we can conclude our show today.
Bwana Malik, what can I say? I share your view. I share your anger. And I can imagine you standing out there kicking somebody's butt because you are so upset, but you are not alone. There will be many people upset like you. And what you are suggesting makes sense. One other person commented about where is all this money coming from and where? It's a question. It's a big question. It's not fitting within the economic capability of Uganda. That's true. This money is coming from borrowed money. The debt is hanging on Uganda's head. This money has been borrowed. If you remember how that guy explained to you Confessions of an Economic Hitman, he said, we will loan the money to a country. We don't care how much it is because we have a purpose to enslave that country. Now that they have enslaved Uganda, they can tell them, send troops pretending you are going to Congo to fight ADF. Hey, not ADF to be fought in Congo. We want you to go to Karamoja, kill out all those Karamajongs. Well, as hyenas do and the coyotes and the jackals, you take the land, graze your cattle while we are digging the gold and uranium and the marble. Yes, sir. You become a tool. I call them toilet papers. They are going to use you. They are going to rip off everything they want out of that territory, but they give you elbow room, do whatever you want. Now, if you are interested in killing the natives, good, go ahead and do it. We are going to turn a blind eye. As I told you, that colonel who was in charge of Somalia, an American army colonel, told me that we know, in fact, he told me, we know everything more than you do, the bad things Museveni has done, but we don't care because what we tell him, he will do it. He's our bastard child. Whether he's killing you or doing that, we don't care as long as he does what we want. That is their attitude. Then they tell you we are the biggest democracy in the world. We are a very good Christian country. Baloney. If they were Christian, they wouldn't be doing what they are doing, even to themselves. So we have a lot to face, and we better wake up. Now, this money, which is being spent lavishly on these hooligans, and the World Bank and the Chinese and God knows who else has loaned money to Museveni, is going to face the real Ugandans. And I know what those Ugandans are going to tell him. Okay, if you loaned this money to Museveni for this purpose, for eradicating malaria, for AIDS project, we want to record how this money was spent. If you cannot produce proof that this money was spent on eradicating malaria, that you spread DDT in such a swamp and such a place, and we have the evidence, then we don't owe you this money. Go find Museveni wherever he's lying and ask him for your money, but we are not responsible. We should not be responsible for these kind of loans that have been piled up on Uganda's head when these bastards have stolen it. Professor Malik is right. Maybe we need to put them in some kind of concentration camp with hard labor. Maybe we need to do that. But before we put these MPs there are some other people I think should do the hard labor first. And the hard labor will be rebuilding what they have destroyed. Those schools which they have set on fire, we're going to force them to go out there and start building those schools. They will make the bricks, they will hang the nails and the poles and whatever. And I can imagine some of them can't even lift a brick, but they are going to sweat it out. That's their problem. We have to do something. Maybe that's not what we are going to do, but we have to do something. The people of Uganda will figure out what to do. And I have confidence whatever the people decide is going to be the right thing. But one thing that should never be even in consideration, leaving them off the hook. No. That ain't going to work. We have to make them responsible, and they have to pay for the crimes they have committed, one way or the other. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. We have blown off our steam, and I think you have enjoyed it, and so have I. But we are not going to sit idle and watch misleaders, confusers, and healers monopolize the stage. That is not going to cut the cake. Let's work together. Let us be people of action.
It's true what you say. They have really monopolized the stage. How do you? But before we leave, we just got in another message, Mr. Kintu, and this is from Simon Peter from the UK. I'll go ahead and play it as well.
Hello. Just before you close down the program of today, Tower UNN, I have some comments I would like to pass over just before you close. My comments are these. You are advocating for federal. Federal, I think we're just going backward. In my opinion, I think we should concentrate on one Project Uganda. Project Uganda would be looking at solid unity. Look at Uganda as a project. And now, in that project, I suppose we should be thinking of an appropriate ideology and live in Uganda, which is united. When I look at it, federal will revive the old issues of tribalism. But yet, if we are united, you look at somebody as someone from Project Uganda. I don't care whether you are north, from Western Nile, from Wacholi, from Kabale, we are Project Uganda and have a unifying ideology. I think all our efforts and our brains, we should be scratching our brains to create a unifying ideology rather than going into this backward preaching federalism. I see it as something that will revive all the wounds of tribalism. Thank you.
I would like to thank Simon Peter for his sentiments. But anyway, without further ado, I just want to say, using the word backward for an ideology or a system of governance that is being used by a lot of functioning countries in the world, is at the point whereby we must start asking questions. Is it, Mr. Chitu? I will let you reply to this caller, because I think that the stance and point, I'm not within good composure to take this one on.
Well,
because it's
yes, Simon
problematic.
Peter, thank you for your comment, and it is always nice to hear everyone expressing his views, because when you are given a chance to express your views, that is democracy, that is federalism, that is human freedom. Now, you have brought up the word, we should have one Uganda project. Yes, Museveni told us the Uganda project with an ideology, but he did not define which ideology. The ideology has now come out to be Uganda dominated by Tutsis. But that's not what he told us when he said we have to have a new Uganda project with an ideology. That's not new to us. We know what that means. We know where the idea of a Uganda project, there is no such a thing as a Uganda project. There is a Uganda of indigenous Ugandans belonging to different indigenous tribes or nations, whatever you want to call it, because a Karamajong is not an Itesot. An Itesot is not a Munyoro, but they are all Ugandans, and they are proud of being Banyoro, they are proud of being Batoro, they are proud of being Baganda. And that's, by the way, they didn't choose that. God chose that. And we are not going to spit against the wind. Only fools spit against the wind. But if you have brains, you don't spit against the wind, because it's going to come back to you. Now, another thing too is we do not accept open-ended phraseologies. A good many of us are learned too. We can come up with many different and fantastic theologies like ideology, syndromes, you name it. What ideology? Do I need an ideology to be defined as a Muganda? Do I need an ideology to be defined as a Musoga or a Karamajong? No. I am a Karamajong and I'm proud of it. I am a Muganda and I'm proud of it. But all of us have agreed to come together in a united Uganda. I have the old constitution with which we gained political independence. I've gone through it, and I have read this, ideology project of Museveni, which he conned out to give himself all the power. And it is a shame when you read it, because it's a voluminous book, almost defining even where we should fetch water. That's not what we need in a constitution. And by the way, if you look at the constitution of countries like the United States, I have a copy of it here. Next time when we come on this show, I promise, Desire, please remind me to bring all those constitutions, the one of 1962, the one of Obote of 65, and the one of Museveni, and the Constitution of the United States. Please remind me, I'll bring them and show them to you people. The concept of a political ideology does not work. It only serves a dictator like Museveni. And Museveni said that when he started. So what you are trying to tell us, Simon Peter, is to take us back to the beginning of Museveni with this baloney business of a Uganda project. Uganda is not a project. Now, if you're sitting in Kigali, you can look at our project in Uganda of usurping that land. That's what you call a project, because they are in Kigali planning this Uganda project of usurping Uganda. They have this project of usurping Eastern Congo. That's a project. But building that country is not a project. The word project does not come in that kind of planning or sentiment. No. Respect our identity, respect our nationality, respect our diversity, and respect our agreement to work together to form a united Uganda under our diversity. And the only way you can achieve that is through a federal system. A Scottish man is not an Englishman. A Welsh man is not a Scottish man. But they are all living comfortably under the United Kingdom. And you want to spit against that? I would say anybody who thinks that way, which Museveni has already done, because he's the one who brought that idea, a Uganda project, and an ideology thing, pretending to impress those who don't know that he's now a smart guy. I remember one time he called himself, I'm an intellectual. Nobody can claim to be an intellectual. Only a fool can claim to be an intellectual. And we have seen intelligent people around. They don't claim to be intellectuals. They don't claim to be masters of an ideology. I would suggest, my friend, try to go back to school and learn the concept of one man, one vote, majority rule, minority right, and be humble. At least try, even if you are not. Be humble so that you can be able to live in harmony with other people who have a different view or whose view is more popular and acceptable by more people than yours. Thank you very much, and God bless you, Simon Peter.
We've said this so many numerous times, but it's convenient to say that tribalism is a hurtful wound when it's convenient. And then when it's convenient, then us, the same people, claim that, oh, we're very tribalistic right now. But what we fail to recognize is these indigenous nations, there is nothing backward about acknowledging our indigeneity. That is who we are, that is who we have been, who we shall be. Even when we attempt and clash with other cultures, we still exhibit parts of our indigeneity. And now that they still exist, Buganda nation is still there, it ought to be given its sovereignty. It was taken away by the colonizer and further stripped away by, of course, now the neo-colonial puppets. And we know that, so why wouldn't we fight for that? I'm sure the Karamajongs want the same. The Acholi would want the same peace in their region. So federacy has nothing to do with separation, but further unifying people under an umbrella to safeguard themselves from violence, basically. And that is violence from exploitative regimes, policies, and just people who are trying to exploit these regions. So I want to thank Simon Peter for your comment and bringing that, but I do not think that downgrading the political functionality of federalism, which is used by so many different nations, sets us on the right page to get to a project that is Uganda. But with that being said, Mr. Chintu, we're heading towards the end of our show today, but no, sure, sorry, go ahead.
I want to remind the listeners and the viewers about something very important in line with the Simon Peters comments, which I think were bordering derogatory comments about tribalism. There is, right now, you all know there is a country called Poland. But if you read the history of Poland, Poland did not exist for almost 300 years. One portion was conquered by Finland, another portion was conquered by Germany, and another portion was conquered by Russia. They tore the country called Poland, in pieces. And definitely the people of Poland suffered. However, the people of Poland maintained their culture, their language, their identity. When you find a Polish person and says, my name is Kowlinski, you know he's a Polish guy. And for all those years, they were torn in pieces. There was no government of Poland. And for good luck, these people, by maintaining their identity, their language, and their culture, eventually overcame. The national anthem of Poland right now was a song composed by a Polish guy called Chopin. Those who know classical music you've heard a lot of, especially piano concertos by Chopin, Chopin. I think he was in Denmark in exile, like you and me now. And he wrote a song of lamentation, how he was missing his native land because he couldn't go back. It was not safe for him. In the same way, if I was a composer of music, I think I could have written a good song about how I miss Masaka, or Voodoo for that matter. He wrote that song when they regained unification of the peace that had gone to Russia, Finland, and Germany. They adopted that song as their national anthem, which they are now playing. Then they devised, and now we have a country called Poland. So being conquered by hooligans from Rwanda or wherever they came from, is not going to destroy our identity as Ugandans. And those who purport to say that they don't believe in tribalism, well, if they don't believe in tribalism, why are they believing in Batusiism? That's the first thing they should abandon.
Of course, yes.
And accept to be Congolese. You accept to be Congolese if you are settled in Kivu. They should accept to be Ugandans if they are settled in Ankole or in Gomba. But they are not. That is hypocrisy of the highest degree, my friend. And I don't think we are going to be stupid enough to follow that kind of hypocritical reasoning. That is very cheap. It is below my feet. We are going to stand by ourselves. We are going to be respectful of our identities. And we are going to pursue a federal united republic of Uganda, period.
Thank you so much. And Mr. Chintu, I think we have reached the end of our show today. And I would like for the both of us to give our closing remarks. And if you'd like to go first, or actually, before we give our closing remarks, just a few things for us to think about, especially when we think about what we want for our viewers, what we want to get out of all of this. Let us not get baited or try to get the easy way out, because every time we try that sort of strategy, it doesn't work. Because with Uganda, we're dealing right now with a nation that doesn't have unity. So it's even aloof to say that we need a Project Uganda. That's why Museveni robbed the show. He was performing big time. Because an idea of Project Uganda, where Ugandans were not even unified, you cannot just fuse people together and unify them without a way to actually make things accessible to all. And one of the ways to make things accessible to all is give sovereignty to every local leading constituency, so that people know who to go to, so that people can hold their leaders accountable, so that power and means of production can be returned to the hands of the people, so that we're not seated here doing shows about people spending 55 million a month and more. Because we should not be doing this with the amount of resources that we have. This should not be things, but unfortunately, the tragedy has happened and we're doing this. And we cannot think of a way for ourselves out. And we've been divided and strategically put in different places. And we are across generations. We need to get serious. We need to stop being childish. And by stopping to be childish is to recognize that the initial problem was never resolved. We're still dealing with not only the colonial question, but it has been exacerbated where now you have a reactionary group taking over a whole region, but you think they're taking it over for themselves? Of course, it's Mr. Chintu says it time and time again. They have people shaking the bag of money behind them, and best believe they're going to give them guns. So when we choose to participate in these conversations, let's not be shallow, is all I have to say. Let's take a deep breath, think, and then communicate. Because as we talk about these things, we continue to be killed in one way or another. Be it an attack on our health and well-being, be it an attack on people's access to just daily livings, or be it an attack physically that happens through genocide. We opened the show with what the Rwanda and Ugandan troops have been doing in the Congo. But with that being said, Mr. Chintu, if we can both give our closing remarks for today's show, and as always, it's always enriching, or it's always an honor actually having you on the show. So I'll let you go ahead and give your closing remarks as we wrap up today's show.
Thank you very much. As we started, we want to demonstrate unity as indigenous people of the Great Lakes region, because we are all faced with one enemy, and that is the Batusi in that region. We should never forget that. Never. Because without unity, we cannot fight these people. And I want to send a message to my brothers and sisters of Congo. Banamboka na tomboka mingi na awa bayaka Barwandese. Let us unite, work together, and get rid of this snake. Only in action can we succeed. Talking is not enough. We have done that too many times. God bless you. Mukende malamu. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kintu. And as from where we started the show to where we are now, we need to actually start to envision ourselves and start looking at all the levels at which we're being attacked. Because it's not at one stance, at very many different ones. And understand that Uganda as it is will always be there. But what Uganda will be is a reclamation that can only be made by the people who choose or the people who will fight. And that being said, the indigenous nations that were put together within Uganda. And if we're referring to any Uganda project, we have to go back to the 1900 agreement, because that's when a project of Uganda was ever instilled legally. And that was by the British, creating the fabric of what would then be called Uganda. That's when the official project began. And then leader after leader, whoever satisfied the British was left to rule. Museveni then exacerbated it. But with that being said, I would like to say thank you for everyone, all the viewers who have been here with us today. We appreciate bringing your views, your opinions to the show. And as always, it's always a blessing to be here with you when we can make it here. But I would love to say a good evening, a good afternoon, and a good morning to all of you watching from where you're watching. And that will be us for today. Thank you all. Oh, but before we leave, I think we've gotten a message from Simon. So we'll listen to it before we leave, and then we can leave right after this message.
Just a minute before you close down, Mr. Kintu. I suppose we need to elaborate debate on this issue of federalism. When Uganda was formulated, Uganda began as a project. It was experimental. When the British were leaving, they experimented and created what we call Uganda today. But we didn't have a unifying ideology. I suppose if we sat down and created an ideology, that would be very, very, very helpful. Secondly, when you turn down and say you have one enemy, Batusi, you generalize. That generalization is very dangerous. It is not unifying. Because if I am a Mutusi and I'm not part of the clique, where do you leave me? Mr. Kintu, could you please elaborate on your... I've heard you talk Batusi, but many of us are totally innocent. Thank you.
Because we're coming to the end of our show, Mr. Mr. Chintu will not be able to elaborately reply back to you, but my best advice is that please do participate. We do this so that there's full-on participation for all Ugandans from all courses of life to participate in UFCC. So feel free to sign up for UFCC. No one is to be left behind or to be left out. Do participate, do sign up. And for things like this, in order to have conversations and debates and to have talks like this about, because we need to really talk and iron all these things out. So it will happen then. But again, with UFCC, it's to bring together Ugandans from all walks of life and they can participate. And of course, because the Federacy is based off of, and this is for the governance of Uganda, the indigenous communities of Uganda. If you fall in one of those indigenous communities, you're always welcome to sign up. But with that being said, I would like to bid farewell to all of our viewers who've been watching us from where we began to now where we are at. And also like to invite more people to then, if you have been on this show, please also, and you feel that this is a way forward we can go, do go sign up at www.ufcc.co.uk, and on there you can sign up for the UFCC gathering. So this will be the end of our show, and with that being said, the producer will go ahead and close the show. Thank you all. Until next Sunday. And before we leave, of course, the empire, the dynasty that stretched so far south, so far around itself, which was the British Empire, taking on large masses of land in what is known as Abiyala, which now today has been popularized as North America, and stretching its arms all the way to the east into the Middle East, taking colonies as big as India and other colonies, other territories and islands, and it stretched its palms all the way to the African continent, taking on colonies, leading mass genocide, succumbing generations and generations of peoples, all to feed themselves and all to enrich themselves. Finally, they felt it worth to popularize to the world that they are marking, of course, the Jubilee of the Queen. But we must remember that the Jubilee of the Queen of the British Empire only gets celebrated like this because of the legacy of the colonial onslaught of the British Empire. Because not only was it it had a lot of other things to do. The British Empire's participation in the enslavement of African peoples. We can go on and on about the history that they have left behind and the genocide that has expanded across continent to continent. And now the Jubilee is being celebrated. And I think the one legacy that the one of the physical legacies that we can feel is the weight of the British pound just on the economy in collaboration with the weight of the US dollar on the economy. So if you ever thought that we had liberated ourselves from not only the genocide not only the violence economically, physically, and spiritually, and just in general, I'm speaking in English. The legacy has lived on. We communicate in English. So as this is being celebrated, let us not forget the mark that it has left. And I would like to invite Mr. Kintu to also give a word on the Jubilee for the Queen that's being celebrated, and also give another farewell, because we had closed the show, reopened the show, and now we have to give a final closing as well.
Well, thank you again, and thank you, ladies and gentlemen, listeners. I have great respect for people, where they come from, which nationalities they belong to. As I said at one of my shows, Salim Saleh called me up and he was very upset with what I had written in UDC newsletter, revealing some of the things that we are doing in our country. And I told him, and I can say the same thing again, thank you for calling me, but I am not prepared to discuss matters about my country with a non-Ugandan. And I hung up on him. He never called me back. And I hope he doesn't even attempt, because if he does, I'm going to hang up on him. I do not discuss matters about my country with a non-Ugandan. Period. A non-Ugandan can listen to what I say, but I am entitled to my opinion because I am a Ugandan and I have a right to express the things that really matter as far as my country is concerned. And I'm not going to interfere in other countries' affairs. No, I'm not going to discuss the details of how Tanzania should be run. I'm not a Tanzanian. I'm not going to interfere how Zambians should behave or act or treat their country. No. Now, if anybody thinks that he can discuss matters about my country and is not a Ugandan, then I say, my friend, you are in the wrong zip code. Go back to where you come from, then discuss those matters about your country. Leave ours alone. Why was Dr. Stella Nyanzi kicked out of Kenya? Was it 2 years ago or last year? Because she made a mess and discussed something. Yeah, they allowed her to be in Kenya, and then she tried to open her mouth about how the Kenyans were handling certain national issues. And they said, wait a minute, you are not a Kenyan. Go back to Uganda where you came from. They kicked out. And now she's in Germany. And that's what we Ugandans ought to know. And I'm sending a warning to anybody. If you do not belong to an indigenous group of Ugandan, please keep your mouth shut. Don't you dare interfere in how we want our country to look like. It's none of your bloody business. And don't call us again. I don't even want to hear your voice, because I am a damn proud Ugandan. Take it or leave it, damn it. Don't open your mouth again to talk to me about my country. On that, you are provoking the wrong nerve in my brains. Now, regarding the Jubilee of the Queen, yes, I can celebrate the Jubilee of the Queen with lamentation, given what the British have done us as Ugandans. We are suffering today because of them. The problems we have gone through were created by the British. The problems we are in today are a manipulation of the British. So, for me, it is not a jubilee of joy, but a jubilee of melancholic lamentation. Thank you very much, Desire, for giving me this opportunity to express my feelings.
No, thank you so much, Mr. Kintu, for being here, for, being also calm and poised and addressing everything and speaking and also expressing yourself in that nature or manner. we watch you, we learn from you, and we can grow from it as well as we. And when I say we, I'm talking about me and the viewers, because sometimes, even though I co-host with you, I become a viewer, because there's so much that we can still learn, not only about where we're going, but about also where we have been, and opportunities that might be taken away from us because we don't understand the history or don't have a grasp of what has been happening decade after decade. But with that being said, I would like to then give our farewell and also thank you so much, Mr. Kintu. And until next week, we will see you again. We can make no apologies because we cannot wake up with a cannon to our ear and then ask us to think about how the gunman is going to fuel the cannon. So thank you, and until next week, akume atakumira mpera.
Perhaps you would like a marmalade sandwich. I always keep one for emergencies.
So do I. I keep mine in here.
Oh.
For later.
The party is about to start, Your Majesty.
Happy Jubilee, ma'am. And thank you for everything.
That's very kind.